A slender girl burst into the hospitably open doors like a whirlwind. Having missed the greeting, the guest said to the hostess, who, in terms of the impressiveness of her figure, was in no way inferior. I dressed quickly. The screening will start in half an hour, but we still need to get there, bellowed Sandy. What are you doing? What other viewing? Where to go? The guest was almost jumping up and down with impatience. She was actively gesticulating, as if trying to give her friend the necessary acceleration, and sarcastically asked, "What viewing? Couldn't you have asked anything smarter?" "Well, not culinary dance. There is less and less time left." "Why are you so nerdy?" "You don't look too fresh today." The hostess sighed and tried to explain the reason for her fatigue, and Sandy politely refused to participate in the dinner. "To be honest, I'd rather rest at home. Something is not going to improve my grandmother's health. In the morning, my blood pressure went through the roof beyond all the indicators in my memory. Even an ambulance had to be called. Just recently, the therapist came and wrote a bunch of tests that need to be taken to the mobile laboratory tomorrow. I'll call Grandma so that I don't have to go to the clinic." "So, Sandy, let me wish you good luck and keep my fingers crossed for you." The guest twisted her head, showing that she was thinking about her interlocutor. "Why, Victoria, do you want to set me up?" I sent a video of our pair performance to the preliminary selection after I received a message that I liked the dance. I submitted an official application for participation in the dance duet section. A duet is two people. If I suddenly appear on stage alone, then maybe the jury won't look at my number. Urgently looking for a partner is also a dubious undertaking. Thread did not hold back her indignation and directly asked her friend, "Shouldn't you have asked me if I wanted to perform and fight with my opponents for unknown reasons?" Seeing that Victoria did not give in to flattery, Sandy changed her tone. "Victoria, please, 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 please. I don't ask you for anything very often. You will carry out our signature program perfectly, even if you are woken up in the middle of the night. You and I have the perfect team. I simply cannot find another such talented partner, even if I search for several years. Moreover, we have a little more than an hour before the start of the screening." Hearing the girls' voices, an elderly woman came out of the room and greeted the guest. "Sandy, good afternoon." "Yeah. Hello, Irene." Victoria perked up mad. "Grandma, what happened? You feel bad?" The woman shook her head. "Everything's fine." "Victoria, did you hear that? The doctor said that we need to move little by little if the pressure is more or less within the normal range. I'll go to the kitchen now and put some tea on." The guest decided to influence her friend's grandmother. "How are you feeling? Maybe I should run for some medicine while Victoria gets ready." Hutchin smiles. "There is no need to run anywhere for medicine. I have everything I need. Sorry, girls, but I accidentally heard snippets of your conversation but didn't listen. So you better answer. Where do you suddenly need to take Victoria out so urgently?" Sandy's voice sounded pitiful, almost in tears. "Naughty to watch a dance competition. For me, it's practically a matter of life and death." Victoria. The woman looked carefully at Sandy, who folded her hands in a pleading gesture, turned her gaze to her granddaughter, and, looking into her eyes, asked, "No, son, perhaps it would be better for you to rest. I completely tortured you. So, girls, let's go have some tea. Surely this will not be the last competition that will be." Sandy knew very well that it was useless to argue with her friend's grandmother. The girl obediently kicked off her shoes and headed to the bathroom to wash her hands. However, whipping the fragrant foam in her palms, the girl did not stop coming up with arguments that would still help force her friend to join her at the competition. Seating decorously at her long-established place at the table in her best friend's house, Sandy again turned to her grandmother. "You see, this competition is not the most ordinary and passable. Winning it will be a chance to completely change your life. Understand that although the competition is regional, the winners will get a ticket to the capital. To be honest, I understand that at the qualifying stage, you need to shine so much in order to distinguish yourself from the crowd of talents. And then training will begin, and during it, it will be possible to polish the movement almost to ideal. The main thing for me is to pass the first round, but without help, it will be much more problematic. Moreover, I submitted an application for a duet performance. I confess I didn't consult her. It's my mistake, I admit, but I acted with the best intentions. Yes, at least you could ask my opinion on the phone. You and I are constantly in touch, and you haven't even hinted even once." feeling that her friend was not angry and was only grumbling because she was a little vulnerable with her unauthorized decision to participate in the competition. Sandy continued her persuasion. Willing to understand, Victoria will not lose anything if she goes to this viewing for pleasure. If he doesn't get excited about the idea and doesn't want to compete anymore, then he may not continue to participate in the project. I promise that after successfully passing the qualifying round, I will not insist on anything. I'm ready to swear on anything. I just wish I could pass the selection. Please let her come with me. Look, she already looks better. A blush appeared on my cheeks after tea. Assistant Sandy knew how to persuade. Victoria trembled and, looking at her grandmother, asked, "Are you really feeling well, or are you just trying to calm me down?" The woman smiled. "I'm actually fine. Go, my soul. It's time to unwind." Sandy clapped her hands and ran up to hug her friend's grandmother. "May, thank you. You are super. The coolest grandma in the world." Elections woman smiled. And while her granddaughter was getting ready, began asking the guest about the well-being of her family. Soon Victoria announced to her friend that she was ready, and the girls headed to the casting. They decided not to spend money on a taxi. On the way to the venue of the competition, Victoria involuntarily thought that, no matter how you look at it, it couldn't have happened any other way. After all, how could she refuse her best friend, with whom she has shared joys and problems in half for more than half of her life? The girls met at a children's sports camp. They were in different squads and hardly communicated, but after going through a funny situation, they became best friends. It was the passion for dancing that first became the reason for intense competition, and later brought them closer in terms of wealth. The girls' parents were at about the same level and could afford to pay for an expensive hobby. Victoria and Sandy trained in prestigious choreographic studios in the city, but in different areas, and went to training with sincere pleasure. During their summer vacation, both girls missed their favorite activity. So when the camp announced a talent competition, they decided to participate. Of course, each of them was preparing to perform a dance number. The camp management provided a place for training to everyone, of whom, however, there were not very many. The time when a separate one-story building with a hall and a stage was opened was limited, so inevitably the participants knew quite well what their rivals would focus. It cannot be said that Sandy trained in her choreographic studios somehow, but she jealously noted that when performing some elements she was far from Victoria. In addition, the opponent trained with complete dedication. Even outside of rehearsals, Victoria was lost in her thoughts. She walked along the paths for a long time, then stopped, wrote something down in a small notebook and moved on. No matter how hard Sandy tried, she couldn't see what Victoria was recording. The day of the competition came very quickly. There was literally no empty space in the hall. After all, to be honest, there wasn't that much entertainment in the camp. According to the draw, Victoria got to perform immediately after the magician, who opened the parade of talents. Having entered the stage, the girl brilliantly began her performance to a song well known to everyone. However, as soon as the first lines of the second verse were heard from the speakers, the music stopped and silence fell in the hall. But the girl on stage acted as if nothing had happened and continued her dance. Just as before, she managed to look into the hall in such a way that it seemed that she was looking into the soul of every viewer. Victoria's lips moved slightly. Apparently, she still hummed the song quietly, helping herself not to get lost in the dance. It was fantastically beautiful. The silence was suddenly broken by a lonely voice coming from somewhere in the back rows singing popular lines out loud. Then other spectators joined the unknown soloist. Soon, almost the entire room, including not only teenagers, but also a significant part of the staff, picked up the familiar lines. One of the contestants, standing behind the scenes with a guitar, began to play a melody on the instrument while waiting for his entrance. Having spoken, Victoria made several deep curtsies to each side of the hall, as if the crowned person's name were there, and also to the author's unexpected company behind the scenes. Smiling, she blew kisses to everyone, and at that moment there was As a result, the first prize was awarded to Victoria. The silver medal was won by a young man who played the guitar perfectly and won many hearts. An honorable third place went to Sandy. She didn't show that she was upset. I found the strength to congratulate those who beat her and thank the jury and the audience. That evening, after lights out, Sandy came to Victoria's house and called her to talk. The winner did not refuse. At Sandy's suggestion, they went to the dining room so that, according to her, nosy neighbors could not overhear them, and sat down on a bench. Her silence dragged on, and Victoria asked, "Ma'am, well, what did you want?" "Speak quickly, otherwise I'll fall right off my feet from fatigue." "In general, I just wanted to admire your performance. You're great, just super." She handled the unusual situation well, didn't get confused, and danced without a hitch. Victoria was pleased by the praise from a peer who knew about dancing, and she admitted it. "Actually, this merit is not entirely mine. A coach once told us that at competitions of any level, you need to be prepared for anything." She gave an example of how one day at the World Figure Skating Championships in the early 70s, one of the couples competing for the Soviet Union found itself in a terrible situation. The musical accompaniment was simply turned off during the program. However, the Soviet skaters, cutting the ice with their skates creakingly, continued to perform the elements as if nothing had happened. The secret was that, at the insistence of their coach, they practiced differently. The entire dance pattern, or I don't remember exactly what they call the sequence of elements, was subject to a strict rhythm calculated in seconds. And the lack of music in the middle of the performance was not a disaster. It was, of course, much more difficult for them than it is for me today. Can you imagine the difference in the scale of the competition? Besides, no one sang along with them. Today I had this inspiring example in my memory, and their incredible support from the audience was felt. Sandy was delighted. When I called my rival to a meeting, I initially just wanted to find out her secret. Now I decided to become her friend. Victoria accepted the offer to communicate. They exchanged what they knew, and even came up with several dance routines to perform at Parents' Day. The girls came up with a small number and received a storm of applause. Upon returning to the city, the friends continued to communicate. Sandy even moved to the studio where Victoria trained. As they grew older, slender, young, excellent dancing beauties invariably attracted attention at discos. The girls entered the Institute of Culture together and managed to finish their studies. When Victoria's happy, calm life collapsed overnight. Her parents died in the family car. As soon as they drove a little away from the parking lot at the shopping center, the car flew into the air. The doctors were powerless to do anything. The only thing that saved the girl was that she didn't feel very well that day and stayed at home and didn't go shopping with her parents. She lay on the sofa under a warm blanket and drank tea with lemon, trying to quickly overcome her illness. Seeing her grandmother in front of her, who opened the door of her dead daughter's apartment with her key, Victoria realized that something irreparable had happened. She hugged her granddaughter and whispered the news in her ear. The girl could not find a place for herself. It seemed to her that if she had gone with her parents, she would certainly have noticed something was wrong and prevented the death of her loved ones. She tried not to upset her grandmother, but sometimes tears would fall from her eyes as soon as anything reminded her of her parents. During that terrible period, Sandy became a real support for Victoria. She literally moved into the apartment where her friend Sandy moved after the tragedy and did not allow her to leave in grief. She lived there, almost forcibly took her to college, forced her to at least eat something. To the surprise of many neighbors, the perpetrator involved in the massacre of Victoria's parents was detained. Moreover, the main merit did not belong to law enforcement agencies who, as if someone had issued a directive not to be too active in the search for the criminal. The grandmother spared no expense in ensuring that not only the murderer, but also the person who ordered the massacre of her only adored daughter and son-in-law, whom she, contrary to popular folklore, respected and loved, was punished. Eileen sold her jewelry and diligently protected her granddaughter from the details of the investigation and legal vicissitudes. She seriously feared for Victoria because her psychological state, even 6 months after the tragedy, was deplorable. As soon as the girl approached the house where the apartment was located, where she lived with her parents, she began to become hysterical. Victoria could not forgive herself for being alive. The girl flatly refused to return to where she was once happy. Irene didn't insist. It was not easy for her herself, but alone she would probably have simply lost her mind. Her granddaughter and punishing criminals became her anchor for maintaining her sanity, but Victoria held on partly because of her grandmother. And with the help of Sandy, she tried to continue living in a new reality. The financial situation has noticeably deteriorated, and Irene, after much deliberation, arranged a home council with her granddaughter's girl. I understand that we have a difficult conversation ahead, but I won't make important decisions without you. I know that they don't throw away apartments, but I honestly feel sorry for renting them out. I'm afraid that instead of money, we will end up with devastation. How do you think? Grandma, you're right. It's too hard for me to be there afterwards. I still can't find a normal job, and I'm already ashamed to sit on your neck. The woman hugged her granddaughter tightly, glad that she did not cry. During a short but emotionally difficult conversation, the whirlwind with the sale of my daughter's apartment began. Throughout all the tragic, difficult days, when the woman was wandering around the city trying to get justice and resolving other issues, Sandy supported her friend. She even tried to drag Victoria to all sorts of entertainment events. It was no use. However, Victoria knew that Sandy met some guy at one of the discos where she couldn't get her out. And now, having made sure that her friend was in relatively normal condition, she spent all her free time with him. Victoria felt offended that Sandy seemed to be hiding her boyfriend from her, but she understood everything after another serious conversation with her grandmother. Somehow she spoke. "My girl, I know that you very suddenly had to grow up, but that's how fate decreed it. In general, this is not what I wanted to talk about now. The fact that you start seeing each other less is inevitable. One day this was bound to happen. You can't be close to her everywhere, otherwise it's something abnormal. Don't be offended that she doesn't introduce you to her boyfriend. This is quite easily explained. That's the way the world works, is that love is always placed above friendship," and Tori objected indignantly. "So I'm not going to take Sandy's boyfriend away." My mother smiles. "I didn't think so. Sandy probably doesn't suspect you of any bad intentions either. However, she instinctively tries to spend more time with the guy and doesn't interfere with you in her meetings so as not to scatter his attention. And are flighty people. Not all, of course, but alas, very many. So I also want you not to be offended in vain and not to be too trusting. I didn't tell you, but you have the right to know. Your parents, as it turned out, were dealt with by people whom they considered good friends. Just remember that you can only trust yourself completely, unconditionally, and completely. Must be especially careful when you love. Happiness appreciates silence. The less you brag." Victoria nodded, listening to her grandmother. Everything fell into place. The resentment against my friend evaporated like raindrops from hot asphalt. Victoria really carefully remembered all the words of her only loved one. The girl always admired her grandmother, and now she was a little ashamed that she had left her beloved relative unattended. Of course, now having almost reached the desired stop, it was stupid to turn back. All that remains is to perfectly fulfill your friend's request and return home quickly. Scraps of triumphant, sad, and instructive memories managed to flash through Victoria's head while they were on their way to the casting. Even before arriving at the place, the girl's thoughts were interrupted by Sandy's enthusiastic monologue, which was anticipating success. "Very soon we will receive our diplomas, and then, hello, new life in the capital. The prospects will be better than in our dense city." Victoria thought that she was already accustomed to the ambitions and spontaneous actions of her best friend, but Sandy managed to surprise her, and she objected to the good name of her small homeland. Something happened that had never happened in many years of friendship. Sandy was embarrassed, and in order not to respond to the statement, abruptly turned the conversation to the details of the upcoming performance. As we approached the venue of the competition, Victoria began to feel more and more apprehensive. Judging by the fact that the line to the old building, which was once a cinema, stretched like a thin snake for almost half of the long stop, two things became obvious. First, the competition looked set to be tough. Secondly, the casting was not organized in the best way. However, after the girls stood for about an hour among the same people who wanted to become famous in the field of dance, the line suddenly began to move much faster. When Sandy and Victoria finally got their moment to perform, the reason for the sudden acceleration became clear. They barely had time to perform a couple of movements when the man sitting in the center of the table with the jury shouted, "Great, just bravo, enough. Wait in the next room. We need to discuss the concept for the further development of the duet. There is water, tea, healthy sweets. Rest a little later and you will be invited for an interview." Victoria didn't care because at the insistence of her stubborn friend, she only agreed to participate at the very initial stage. But Sandy's hands were almost shaking. She was afraid to hear that the project did not need a dance duet. Victoria, feeling Sandy's excitement, quietly whispered, "It seems I have completed my mission. Now I can say that I refuse to further participate in the competition, so as not to take the place of girls who dream of getting into the project." Sandy's heart was relieved, and she entered the impromptu waiting room in a great mood, provided by the support of her best friend. Previously, when the building was, as planned during construction, a cinema, there was a cafe here. So, in a fairly spacious room where there were already about 15 lucky people, Sandy and Victoria easily found a place for themselves. The situation was nervous. A pretty brown-haired middle-aged woman, who was in charge of the distribution of provisions and kept order, smiled sweetly at the contestants, poured tea and water, offered sweets and something that looked like homemade marshmallows. Victoria refused any treats. But Sandy, having politely thanked Zlata, as it was written on her jacket, decided to enjoy sweets and tea. Taking a sip of her drink, she whispered to her friend, "Why are you ashamed? The same Zlata is here, it seems to me, for a reason." He probably looks closely and gradually observes which of the contestants has what character. Anyone who is rude to her will obviously not make it past the qualifying round. Again, look how closely she looks at everyone, especially if there are girls in a group. In dance groups, you yourself understand, like astronauts, psychological compatibility is important. So she notices which group is more promising to Victoria. But you, Sandy, you are simply an unsurpassed strategist. Spin smiles. It is what it is. You just can't imagine how much I want to break free from here to the capital. Parents constantly name. Don't stay out late. Eat well, otherwise it's almost transparent, she mimicked. Victoria remained silent so as not to cry. She would be glad for her mom and dad to tell her something. She missed those times when the whole family was together. Fortunately, the painful conversation for Victoria was interrupted. A friend from the choreographic studio approached the girlfriends, and they chatted a little, remembering the past. The conversation helped me forget a little about the tense situation. The number of contestants in the hall did not decrease, and new ones came to replace those who went into the room for an interview. Soon they invited an old friend of Sandy and Victoria for an interview, and the next two were called into the room. In the room, lounging on the sofa, half lying, half sitting, was a man who from the first moment made the most unpleasant impression on Victoria. Mannered and haughtily, although looking up at the girls, he slightly stretching out his vowels. "I'm the producer of this project. To be honest, I watched on the online camera how you move, and it is impressive. You have an excellent duet, such coherence, such harmony, and such plasticity. You seem to move without tension. It's obvious that it's a thrill to get away from a performance, and this is very much appreciated. Just in general, I'm ready to make you a unique offer right now. I'm hiring you at a club in the capital. At first, of course, there will be a probationary period, but all the tips are yours. Of course, you will need to learn a little. Our establishment has its own specifics, but I think girls, you are talented, capable, and can handle it easily." Victoria couldn't contain her surprise. Sandy, who already had a picture of her being applauded in a huge capital hall before her eyes, suddenly also thought about her friend's quite reasonable question. Anton laughed nervously and explained, focusing on the age of the contestants. "It seems like minors were not allowed to attend our casting. So where did such naivety suddenly come from? Or did you decide to put on a comedy here? You will have to dance in a club. The visitors, they're generous and excited." The producer did not name the work what it most likely actually was. But Victoria realized that she had to leave this room as quickly as possible. Taking Sandy by the arm, the girl politely said goodbye. "Sorry to take up your time, but we have to go." Contrary to fears, neither Anton nor anyone else restrained the girls. They calmly walked out of the former cinema building onto the street. The always cheerful Sandy sank, realizing that she almost got into trouble, and Victoria encouraged her. "Well, don't worry, there will still be normal castings. In the meantime, let's catch a taxi. I'm very worried about my grandmother." Sandy, who felt awkward, was inconvenient to refuse, although she planned to go on an extraordinary shopping spree to improve her mood. While the girls were riding in a taxi, Victoria asked, "Let's not scare my grandmother with the truth about this false casting. Let's just say it didn't work out. This is true in reality. She doesn't need to know the details." Of course, the friend immediately agreed. "I myself hate to think that they could deceive me so easily. I could check this company and the organizer." "Okay, now I'll be smarter. Thank you, Victoria, for coming with me." Victoria smiled at her friend, although, to be honest, she felt bad in her heart. For the sake of this exchange competition, she left her grandmother alone. And I would never forgive myself if something bad happened during this time. To the girls' great relief, everything was relatively fine with Irene. However, the woman promised her granddaughter that she would undergo a full examination in the near future. "Don't worry, I'll go through all the doctors." At the local clinic, the queue to see a cardiologist was scheduled 3 months in advance. The neurologist was on vacation. There was no endocrinologist at all. In fact, only therapists and specialists. An ophthalmologist and a gynecologist worked. Victoria smiled sadly, remembering Sandy's passage about her hometown, and mentally partly agreed with her. Yes, a millionaire, a clinic in the city center with almost no doctors. Late at the insistence of her granddaughter, Irene went to a private paid clinic. After all, Victoria was adamant. "Let's withdraw the money left from the sale of the apartment from the account, but you will see the doctors without such a long wait." The woman could only obey, and her epic began with visiting the clinic, taking tests, and undergoing examinations. Victoria, of course, asked her grandmother about the results, but in the bustle before graduation, she simply did not have time to study what was indicated. Irene cheerfully reported to her granddaughter that all the identified deviations from the norm were simply senile changes, which aroused Victoria's indignation. "Nonsense. You are always young to me." In fact, Irene's health was not as rosy as she presented it to her granddaughter. In addition to the diagnosed diabetes mellitus, the cardiologist was concerned about the condition of her heart. The intelligent woman did not panic and checked the diagnosis in another place and then in another clinic. But all the doctors were unanimous. The condition was dangerous and it was necessary to prepare for surgery. She diligently followed all the recommendations, and Victoria happily noted that the feverish blush had disappeared from her grandmother's cheeks. Late a need for when an underwent surgery, and it seemed that a new happy period of life was beginning ahead. Having received their diplomas, Victoria and Sandy decided to open their own choreographic studio, where not only children but also adults who decided to join dancing could come. The girls relied on an unusual approach. They offered visitors a mix of modern dances, and also began choreographing couples' movements to wedding compositions, using an idea from a movie they had once seen. In addition, Victoria decided that in her free time she would sew, learning from her grandmother's experience. Otherwise, promoting a studio from the very beginning is not the fastest thing. Surprisingly, needlework captivated the girl, helping her take her mind off her troubles. Moreover, Irene turned out to be a patient and knowledgeable teacher and happily shared with her granddaughter all the wisdom that she knew a great deal. Just a few months later, justifying the wildest hopes of the housewives, the studio began to enjoy success. Of course, there was still no talk of net profit, but still the idea turned out to be successful. Victoria was happy that she was doing what she loved, both at home and in the company of a friend. Most of all, the girl's soul was warmed by the thought that her grandmother no longer had to finance their small family alone. Everything was fine for almost a year, and then my grandmother suddenly passed away. The girl returned home and saw that her grandmother was lying on the sofa, as if resting. She slowly went over to cover her with a blanket because it was quite cool in the apartment, since the central heating had already been turned off and, as usual, frost had returned. As soon as the girl came closer, a cry of horror escaped, it seemed, from the very depths of her soul. It was obvious that her grandmother could no longer escape the cold. The unrest that she experienced turned out to be fatal for the woman, in the turmoil saying goodbye to her only relative. Victoria found her outlet in the studio, lost herself in the movements, and carefully watching the dancers, the girl drove away her pain. For Sandy, for whom everything seemed to be fine, tried not to sparkle with happy eyes so as not to irritate her friend, and came to visit her less and less. Victoria was not offended. Who wants to communicate with a sad person? She was disgusted with herself, spending a long time sorting through fabrics, of which her grandmother had accumulated quite a lot. The girl seemed to be talking with her beloved relative, and it seemed that this was the only way she could, if not forget about the mental pain, then at least reduce it. One evening, having lost track of time, the girl completely forgot about the safety rules. Hearing the doorbell ring, for some reason she immediately decided that Sandy, whom she had not even seen today, had come running in. A friend warned me that she would not be able to teach classes due to personal matters, and probably dropped in to tell me something. This was a result. Victoria, without looking through the peephole, opened the doors and retreated when she saw an unfamiliar middle-aged man on the threshold with a box of cake in his hands. The girl muttered, "You must have made a mistake," and began to close the doors. However, the man did not allow her to do this and surprised her with an unexpected revelation. Hello, Victoria. What an adult you are, and you won't even recognize it. Well, I'm not proud. I'll introduce myself. My name is Michael. I am your dear grandfather. The girl grinned unkindly, remembering what her mother told her. Much more, dear. He left his grandmother when your common daughter went to school. And as far as I know from my mother, I visited a couple of times at most. So all the best to you and goodbye. The man put his foot on the threshold so that Victoria, even if she wanted, could not slam the door in front of him, as she intended, and in a stern tone, which sent shivers down the back of the not timid girl, he said, "Granddaughter, don't get excited. Part of the apartment partially belongs to me." She most likely did not bother with this formality, the proud girl. So, dear granddaughter, excuse me, move over and let me pass. Stunned, Victoria, using all her strength, managed to throw on the door chain and shouted to the visitor, "I'll call the police now, so you know." Mayan just grinned. "Yes, call as much as you like. It's even better that you make sure that I'm telling the truth. I'll also tell you that my granddaughter is the only one who won't let me in the door. I have a signature cake from the city of my childhood. Surely the police will like it." The man removed his leg. Victoria, slamming the door, locked it and froze in doubt. Indeed, will she call the police now? And what will she say? Come, because there is a relative unknown to me at my door. But he doesn't threaten or attack. After thinking, the girl, just in case, moved away from the door and dialed her friend's number. Briefly explaining the situation to Sandy, Victoria asked, "Help me out. I think your cousin knows someone in the police. Ask if it's not too difficult, what should I do?" "Understood. Don't worry. Give me 10 minutes and wait for my call." Sandy called her excited friend back, even a little earlier than the announced date, and joyfully said, "Wait, we'll arrive soon. Me and the reinforcements. You will open the door only after I tell you." Victoria sighed with relief. "Thank you, Sandy. I owe you." The girl tiptoed to the door to understand what would happen, and soon heard quiet male voices. It was very difficult to make out who was talking about what, and Victoria was now kicking herself for insisting on good sound insulation during the renovation. However, I didn't have to suffer for long. There was a knock on the door. Victoria led a friend and her cousin, Victor, whom she knew a little, into the apartment. A grandfather and an unfamiliar man appeared from nowhere. Sandy introduced him to Victoria. "This is Denny, one of the best lawyers. He will help resolve the issue with the least amount of effort." The man bowed his head and said in a pleasant baritone voice, "Although under such unexpected circumstances, I am very pleased to meet you. If you don't mind, let's all sit down at the table." I asked the citizen to calmly state the essence of his claims and present the documents that he has. "If you don't mind, Victoria, I'll ask you to prepare receipts for paying for the apartment. It can be for the last month or any other month. It's not too important." The lawyer's voice fascinates the girl. She was even glad about her grandfather's sudden invasion because this incident led to a pleasant acquaintance. While Victoria went to another room to get the receipt, Denny managed to study the passport that the girl's grandfather gave him and handed the document to Victor. "Hey, shiners, look with your own eyes. The stamp about marriage looks strange. It seems to me, Cousin Sandy, having carefully examined the stamp, began to photograph all the pages of the passport." Michael raised his eyebrow in surprise, but before he could speak, the lawyer asked him an unexpected question. "Which store did you buy the cake from?" The man even became dignified, boastfully declaring, "You can't buy this here. In my hometown, in the only confectionery they bake according to old recipes. Yesterday before leaving, I went in and bought it." Answered Tommy True. "Bennett, it looks like you and I, Michael, are fellow countrymen. Only I haven't been to my native land, perhaps for 5 years. Who's there in the candy store?" "Still the same woman with glued eyelashes." Michael nodded. The lawyer was delighted, as if he had been told the most joyful news. "We need to go and see how he trades." "So Michael, whatever you call it, that saleswoman has been resting in the ground for 15 years now. I doubt that you are related to Victoria. Even if this were so, according to the receipts that she kindly provided for the last 6 months, you are not registered here. You have no right to this living space. And if you are thinking of filing a lawsuit, you will only be wasting your time and money. So, good advice to you. Get out of here and don't show up again. Otherwise, don't even doubt it. I will find an article under which you can be brought to administrative or even criminal liability." Nodding, the elderly man with surprising pride grabbed his document and walked towards the exit. Victoria shouted after, Take the cake. I don't need anything from you." The fraudster did not resist or refuse and almost ran away from the apartment, of which he failed to become a full-fledged tenant. Victoria was overjoyed and agreed to release her saviors only after an impromptu feast. She sincerely thanked her friend, her cousin, and the lawyer who had so masterfully saved her from her problems, and asked a direct question. "Nay, Denny, please tell me your fee." The man laughed. Sandy joined in the lawyer's laughter. Everyone made fun of the unlucky imposter. When the guests left, Victoria did not even think that the strange incident would have a pleasant continuation. However, the very next day, Denny came to her in the morning, brought coffee and cake from a rather high-status coffee shop, explaining this is as an apology for not being able to try the cake yesterday. The girl thanked the lawyer and, feeling a little awkward, suggested having breakfast together. During the conversation at the table, Victoria had the feeling that she had known Denny all her life and that he understood her perfectly. They even had the same musical tastes, which was not the case even with Sandy, who could not stand either rock or classics. Victoria was not even surprised that communicating with Denny had become a necessity for her, a real addiction. Once, during another date, the man reluctantly, as if embarrassed, shared with the girl the difficult story of his life. He said that he was married, and after a divorce, he moved from his hometown, a modest city, to the metropolis where he once studied. "That's it, until I meet you. I lived, worked, rented an apartment not far from the office, and didn't even think that I would ever love him so much." Victoria's heart melted from the tenderness of Denny, with whom she felt like behind a stone wall. A girl once invited her beloved man to move in with her, and he agreed. To confirm the seriousness of his intentions, he gave him a thin engagement ring and proposed getting married closer to summer. Now, can you imagine what a beautiful ceremony could be organized? No. Winter also has its charms, but you won't be able to have an enchanting photo shoot in nature. And I so want you to remember our wedding day forever. Now, I saw Sandy Victoria almost exclusively at work. One day, entering the tiny office, which they proudly called the trainer's room, she found her best friend in tears. "What's happened? Did you get injured? Should I call a taxi to the hospital?" Sandy shook her head. "May, I'm upset. I just don't need anyone." Van Mishoria was amazed. "What are you doing? I need you. In an hour's training, everyone will be waiting for you there. Don't mope. Don't be sad." Victoria tactfully did not ask where the mysterious gentleman had gone, from whom her friend's eyes shone so much, and suggested to her, "Now you don't even have time to talk to me. I don't have anyone to go dance with. Just relax." Sandy burst into tears. The last spring month had already passed the halfway point, and I no longer talked about formalizing the relationship. Victoria would probably have walked around for some time, as they say, with rose-colored glasses and not suspect anything, but one day during a joint dinner, she had to leave the company of her fiancé and best friend to talk on the phone with the mother of one of the studio students. Girls. Returning to the table, Victoria almost caused a scandal when she saw Sandy, having moved to her rightful place, kissing Denny. The deceived bride had to call on all her self-control to help her almost calmly report. The girls' cheerful communication was in full swing when Denny returned to the apartment. He greeted Sandy warmly, kissed Victoria, and, after thinking, invited the girls to a cafe serving Italian cuisine. From that evening, the man also began to take an active part in ensuring that his beloved friend did not feel abandoned and lonely. On weekends, the groom took the bride and her friend to a country park, to a hotel for a picnic, or rented a house at a campsite where they could go skiing and snowboarding. Victoria was sincerely glad that her friend stopped shedding tears. In addition, things in business also went uphill. The girls even opened a branch of the studio without hesitation, entrusting all the paperwork to Denny. Victoria dreamed that soon her beloved would take her to apply. I found out in advance the work schedule of the wedding palace, all the formalities, details, and waited for this fateful day to come. "Hey, let's sit with me this evening." Denny said he would work late. "He needs to go somewhere, and you and I will rest. We will set up a beauty salon at home, all kinds of masks, peelings. In general, I'm glad that everything is finally cleared up. Yes, Denny and I are together now. But let's not make a universal tragedy out of this, okay? I would like our business not to suffer because of your possible offense. Be professional. I understand that it will be difficult for you to see me, so I suggest we don't cross paths temporarily until you cool down. It's even scary. Just look, steam will come out of your ears." However, the friend was unembarrassed and, rummaging in her purse, said in a completely casual tone, "So, Denny, as far as I understand, you are moving, so give me your set of keys. I'll collect your things and let you know when you can pick them up. Sandy, you also return the keys to my apartment." Victoria was surprised. "We'll divide the studios like this. The one closest to my home will be on me. You can safely conduct training in the branch. For rent, so be it. You will pay the minimum and you can take half of the profit that you make for yourself. The rest will be accumulated in accounts for future development. I think this is reasonable and fair." Sandy smiled triumphantly, putting a bunch of keys out of her bag and taking the apartment keys from the carabiner. She continued to express her thoughts. Denny tried to calm down the girl, whom he had just not only abandoned, but also, thanks to her gullibility, deprived of a very significant part of his income. "Wait, Sandy, are you kidding me? Why do I suddenly have to pay rent and give away profits? I'm an owner just like you." Pretendly. "No. Don't make a scandal. People are already looking at us. Kitten, understand this happens. Do not blame yourself. You are a wonderful person, a talented and beautiful girl. Everything will be all right. Let's remain friends." So, having actually knocked the ground out from under my feet, taking away the joy of doing what I love, you are also trying to look like a benefactor. Oh, what great fellows. But keep in mind that I will not give up. I will study all the documentation very carefully and will not allow you to wipe your feet on me. Let's build relationships in a civilized manner in new circumstances. I think you're being too dramatic. You, of course, as a coach and in dancing, have no equal. But in business, excuse me, you don't understand anything. Who, without looking, signs such papers as a general power of attorney, changes in statutory documents? The management of the business will be in Denny's in my hands. And you do what you do best. Show them how to dance. Victoria remembered that, indeed, without even reading and believing, solely only Denny's oral retelling. She signed several sheets of paper and flared up. Then she tied the corners of the bedspread crosswise and carried the unexpectedly heavy bundle to the door so that she could push it out the threshold as soon as her ex-fiancé arrived. Having finished clearing the apartment of Denny's belongings, Victoria rushed to study all the documents that were at home. The more the deceived girl immersed herself in reading, checking the meaning of terms on the internet if necessary, the greater her horror. Grabbing her purse, Victoria ran home, not looking back at the calls to stop that the traders shouted after her. In the apartment, she, running from one room to another, turning into the bathroom, into the kitchen, grabbed the Denny things she saw and threw them on the bed. She was now not a co-owner, but an ordinary hired employee, and could not even arrange a vacation or set a convenient work schedule without Sandy's approval. Victoria, of course, could have quit even now, but she decided to try to work for at least a month in order to prepare an escape route, rent a room and organize a new studio there, luring a maximum number of clients. Victoria didn't even talk to Denny, who came to pick up her things. And as soon as the bundle with his things was on the landing, she hurried to close the door. Now going to her beloved Victoria's studio was like going to hard labor. A week later, the flow of customers decreased noticeably. Even regular students began to refuse classes, knowing how naive she was, how insanely gullible. How right the grandmother was when she said that you cannot trust anyone on condition. The girl could not imagine such a blow from Sandy, who she considered her best friend and her groom. Even in her worst nightlight, and the power of attorney that Victoria gave to Denny played a very bad joke. The man, taking advantage of her boundless trust, legally arranged everything in such a way that the girl, in fact, had almost no rights to the studio. Thanking her for the valuable information, the girl said goodbye to the visitor and went to the trainer's room on weakening legs. I wanted to grab my things quickly and, once I got home, unwind to my heart's content. However, she decided first of all to write to her ex-friend that she was quitting. Victoria blamed herself, thinking that during training there was not enough courage, and that spark that ignites talent in people who are embarrassed to dance. But one day, one of the first visitors, who became a regular, opened her eyes to what was happening. It turned out that Sandy simply blatantly lures clients into her hall, not disdaining any methods. The most harmless lie of her ex-girlfriend was the supposedly random news that Victoria was going to leave, and therefore, of course, she had no time for class, and she immediately fulfilled her intention. The response message that came to the messenger on her phone completely unsettled Victoria. The photo showed a vignette-style invitation to the wedding of Sandy and Denny with the mocking column +1 before the girl had time to catch her breath. Another message came. We really want you not to be angry with us and share with us the moment of our joy. The dress code is smart. Sandy and Denny. Victoria was shocked. What did she do to humiliate her like that? Why are the people she considered her support now pushing her into the abyss of despair? Was she really that deeply mistaken about them? The girl didn't know what to do, but she clearly understood that in such a state, under no circumstances could she be left alone. You need to be somewhere among people so that sinful thoughts about the most terrible way to solve problems do not enter your head. The girl went to the nearest park. There are a lot of people there, and at the same time, no one invades your personal space. If Victoria's state of mind could influence nature, the leaden gray sky would be struck by lightning. People trying to quickly hide from the bad weather would be whipped in the faces by stinging rain. Gusts of wind would tear down the tents of installed street cafes. But everything was almost exactly the opposite. The mood of one unfortunate, humiliated girl did not change anything. The sun was shining brightly in the sky. Young greenery on the trees provided a pleasant, rich shadow, and the park looked great. The unknown florist clearly did his best to create a magnificent landscape and did everything with his soul. The park was much more comfortable than Victoria remembered it, and she sat down on a bench to try to detach herself from all the worries that almost brought her to the bad edge today. She felt as if she was performing on stage and the music disappeared again. Only this time the girl had no idea what kind of dance she was performing or what kind of melody she was playing. All that was left was to freeze in confusion and desperately try to figure out what to do next. Right in front of the place where the girl settled down, there was some kind of late variety of tulips, which looked, if not winners in life, then definitely the owners of the flower beds. I wish I had their self-confidence, Victoria thought, and her thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a male voice. Why are you shedding tears? Victoria, who did not notice how she began to cry, was not going to talk to anyone and did not answer anything to the curious stranger. He left, but soon returned and sat down next to the sad girl. In each hand of the stranger there was a bowl of ice cream and a fluffy cloud of cotton candy. The man began to explain patiently in order to stop the girl, who was about to jump up and run away from him. Don't be scared, Victoria. But it so happens that I know you, although we are strangers. I work for a private investigator who, on behalf of your grandmother, worked to uncover the murder of your parents. Since we were seriously afraid that the scoundrels would use all means to influence the course of justice, my boss instructed me to keep an eye on you secretly. So we can say that you were my ward for several months. The girl looked closely at the man. Perhaps he had once flashed nearby, but she could not be sure of this. The stranger smiled and introduced himself. Me, Simon, employee of the private agency's secret. After meeting, the man handed Victoria a cone and cotton candy, explaining, in the movies they said that ice cream seems to make you more fun, but I thought maybe your throat hurts. So I took some more cotton candy. For example, I simply adore her. Victoria was in a bad mood and she answered Simon not too kindly. You can enjoy it. I try not to eat any of these types of sweets. The man smiled. Well, there is no way. True, I can't eat that much myself. Wait, now I'll treat those boys who are counting change at the kiosk, and I'll be back. Without knowing why, Victoria obeyed and waited for Simon. The assistant detective asked, You can consider this a professional interest, and if it's unpleasant for you, you don't have to answer. But I'll still ask, why are you crying on such a wonderful day in this beautiful park? Victoria grinned and decided to share her trouble. The day could perhaps be called wonderful, if not for one circumstance. Today, 2 traders took me and invited me to a wedding. My ex-fiancée is going to solemnly marry my ex-best friend. Also, the invitation is so mocked for 2 persons. They know that I have no one to go with. They're making fun of me. I just don't understand. The girl briefly told Simon the sad story of her unsuccessful love, and the man even whistled. Listen, Victoria, you may not believe it, but my instinct tells me that someone elegantly arranged your acquaintance with this Denny. You know, your grandmother was more than generous. I then received a very round sum for the work, much more than I expected. I later learned from my boss that Irene even sold some of her things to pay. You know, I was still ashamed then. Well, I was young then, I desperately needed money. In general, I didn't, as I originally wanted, to return part of my fee to your grandmother. Today I saw you, and that old feeling of shame came over me. So it seems to me, now I have to kind of return the change in the form of finding out the truth about this grandfather and your ex-fiancé. If you want, come to the agency in 2 days. I'll give you a business card with the address and phone numbers, or we can meet in any other place of your choice. This was the girl who, during a conversation with Simon, had suspicions about the too close coincidence of tastes and views with Denny, looked at the business card handed to her and replied, "Perhaps the day after tomorrow I'll go to the agency. It will be more convenient for me." Victoria walked home and thought, indeed, how strange her acquaintance with Denny had developed. The man seemed to know the unmistakable path to her heart. He even used the perfume exactly the way she likes it, with a top note of lemon and a long-lasting sillage. After all, this is not the most obvious choice at first glance for a serious, successful lawyer, as Denny seemed to be. In addition, several times Victoria noticed that he frowned contemptuously when she danced to the tune of her favorite rock band, although he claimed that he adored their work. When asked why grimaces flashed across his face, the man answered very convincingly, as Victoria seemed to be in love, about sudden colic or an attack of headache. Closely studying her memories of the recent past, the abandoned bride discovered more and more oddities. Arriving home, Victoria was already convinced that Denny, having previously learned as much information as possible about her, had done everything to gain her trust and move into her apartment as a groom. Frankly, he managed it with ease. But what was his goal? Victoria did not keep any cash in her apartment. A sewing machine, fabrics, and remnants of the family jewelry collection were all the valuables that the girl had. Out of fear, Victoria checked the hiding place. A pair of antique earrings and a ring were in place. The girl calmed down a little, but the next morning, she took the jewelry and headed to the bank and put it in the safe deposit box, because she had no guarantees that Denny had not taken care of a duplicate key. Besides, Sandy could do it too. After visiting the bank, the girl planned to call a locksmith to change the lock just in case. Therefore, having signed an agreement to rent a locker and place jewelry there, I decided to withdraw the accumulated interest from the account so that I had cash on hand. However, an employee of a financial institution stunned Victoria with the news. "I'm sorry, but according to your power of attorney, all funds were withdrawn from the account yesterday." Trying not to scream, Victoria clarified, "Tell me, to whom did I write out the power of attorney?" You can see, the employee did not refuse the strange client and named a name that Victoria never expected to hear. It was not Denny who took the money from the account, as the girl assumed, but her ex-best friend. After thanking the operator, who sympathetically asked if everything was okay, Victoria wandered home. It suddenly became clear to her, like daylight, that it was Sandy who could so accurately orient Denny about all her likes and dislikes. It wasn't enough that her best friend didn't know about naive Victoria. It was at her suggestion and at her instigation that the man managed to appear in the image of an ideal. She believed in incredible harmony and love at first sight. Now, there was an explanation for a lot of things, and the fact that Sandy pressed on pity, cursing her loneliness, was also part of the plan. Surely, by inviting her to the wedding, the traitors also planned something insidious. Maybe someone would be involved in a raid on the apartment, while Victoria, swallowing tears, would say words of congratulations to them. After all, the friend knew for sure that she still had jewelry. She never told her where the hiding place was located in the house. Victoria did not contact the police about the theft of money, because formerly Sandy had a power of attorney, and there was no doubt that it was a completely real signature. The master replaced the lock on the door, and the girl felt a little calmer. However, she could not completely relax. I decided to use my insomnia to my advantage. Victoria began to think about an outfit to make a spectacular appearance at the wedding of people who had so vilely betrayed her trust. As soon as working hours arrived, the girl appeared at the secret agency office, following the prompts of the guard sitting near the turnstile. She found a door on which hung a sign with the name of a recent acquaintance and knocked. She came in. Before Simon told the girl the information he had obtained, she admitted, "You know, it looks like you were right. Denny was instructed inside and out by my best friend. By the way, she withdrew money from my account by proxy, but it's my own fault. I signed all the papers that the groom gave me." The man confirmed. "Yes, I managed to talk to my cousin, Sandy Victor. He, perhaps, turned out to be the most innocent element in this scheme. In my opinion, it was used in secret. He's a big guy, and his main task was to creep up on the one who introduced himself as your grandfather." Having caught the surprise on Victoria's face, Simon explained. It was a well-thought-out production. Sandy, as I understand it, knew basic information about your relatives. Denny found an actor to play Michael. You saw your grandfather only in old photographs when he was young, and there was no need to fear exposure. The scammers wanted to get rich, and as I understand it, they almost succeeded. I think they invited me to the wedding not only to mock, but with the same selfish interest. Victoria nodded. I also came to approximately the same conclusions. I only have a few questions running through my head. Why did my best friend, who was there in the most difficult moments, suddenly decide to betray? Why did she decide to treat me this way? We never even seriously quarreled with her, Simon suggested. Maybe simple envy or greed. These are usually the main motives for most crimes. Victoria's face even stretched out a little in surprise. Initially, my family was not much richer than Sandy's was, so it's definitely not greed. As for envy, it was not she who envied me, but I who envied my friend. From the moment my parents died, I went crazy imagining that Sandy could play checkers with her dad, hug her mom, and talk to her. I was overcome with envy. What can I say? I still experience this feeling even now. Maybe she's taking revenge on me for my envy, although unlikely. In general, I don't know what to think. I'm in a lot of pain right now because of everything that's going on. I will definitely go to these traders' wedding, at least in order to, looking at Denny and Sandy, clarify why they treated me so meanly, the assistant detective explained. With Denny's motives, everything is generally clear. He was driven by greed. In his hometown, he has so many debts that you can't even shout guard. He is a rather mediocre lawyer, but his habits are such that he cannot provide for average fees. There were also harmful addictions. He disappeared from the city, having deceived several ladies out of large sums. He was supposedly going to get married. He took money under plausible pretexts and quarreled. He was treated in a private clinic in our region. He gave the doctors almost everything he had from his naive fellow countrymen for his rehabilitation. So I set out again on the path of hunting for wealth. Don't worry, we will definitely fight to get both the dance studio and the money back to you. But don't make waves just yet, otherwise Denny and Sandy might simply run away. And I want to be answered fairly. Victoria began to thank the man, and Simon sighed. I've been able to find so much information on Denny these days that it's even surprising. It seems that he is far from stupid in terms of all sorts of not entirely honest methods. A true master, but apparently overly self-confident. Do you want me to tell you right now all the machinations that he managed to pull off in our city? Or better yet, wait, and then you'll see everything at the wedding. Although Victoria had a desire to know everything at once, she, after thinking a little, answered, I guess I'll wait. I don't really want to plunge even deeper into all this dirt right now. For now, what I have learned is enough for me. There are only two problems left, what to wear and with whom to go. I'm already working on solving the first one, but I don't know what to do with the second one. Simon, maybe you can keep me company, don't think. I will pay for the support because this is a separate job. The man shook his head negatively. No, I'm not suitable for a spectacular appearance. My appearance is standard, inconspicuous, and to be completely honest, well, will you come arm in arm with me, so what? Only your ill-wishers will experience pleasure at the first moment. Just think, it seems like they couldn't persuade anyone better. Here, if you take a swing, you need to deliver a crushing blow so that their mood immediately collapses. Listen, I think I know who to choose as your companion. If it works, it will be great. Well, if not, then of course, I'll leave you the company. The output may not be the most stunning, but I will give out amazing information. Victoria agreed that in any case, they would meet half an hour before the time specified in the wedding invitation and agreed on a place. Having said goodbye, the girl went to the handicraft store to buy accessories for her planned outfit. She only had 2 weeks to create the stunning dress. The time period is not the shortest, but the idea was not too simple. Victoria was nervous and pierced her fingers with a needle several times until it bled. In order not to burst into tears from resentment and pain, the girl recalled her grandmother's words that, according to a sign, a thing sown with such incidents would definitely turn out perfect. The girl didn't have to rush to work and she missed her classes, but she was not going to bow to Sandy and ask to come back. Victoria was warmed by the idea that, quite possibly, the studio would soon be in her possession again, although her gullibility was already failing her. The girl believed that Simon would be honest with her. On Denny and Sandy's wedding day, Victoria looked truly dazzling. It looked like a spark of flame both in color and vague associations. The top of the dress was decorated with a bold, asymmetrical neckline, and the painted skirt with high slits at the seams playfully fluttered as she walked, without revealing anything unnecessary, but perfectly exciting the imagination. Victoria herself knew that she was irresistible in this dress, but she was pleased with Simon's praise. Judging by his quite ordinary clothes, the girl realized that her companion would be someone else, and was incredibly surprised when a man who had once tried to impersonate her grandfather approached her. The detective's assistant introduced himself awkwardly. Michael, unemployed provincial theater actor, but Need forced him to play the role of a fraudster on trust. Pardon me for cheating if you can. Her heart was pounding as if before an important speech, but having overcome herself, she took Michael's arm tightly and walked with him to the restaurant rented from the traders. Asked at the entrance of the girl and her companion. Sandy's parents suddenly met, who very warmly greeted their daughter's friend and looked at her companion with undisguised interest. The bride's mother cordially invited, "Oh, Victoria, I'm so glad you came. Come on in. Almost everything is already assembled there. Have fun, relax, be happy for Sandy and her fiancé. Such a great man. I hope you will be lucky one day too. You deserve it." It was not easy for Victoria to endure this conversation, and as if sensing this, her companion squeezed her hand a little more tightly. Sandy's father admired the way his daughter's friend looked, and was rewarded with a displeased look from his wife, who dragged him further. "Have you forgotten where the manager sent us? Let's go quickly and see you." When Victoria and Michael crossed the threshold of the banquet hall, the girl noted with satisfaction that Sandy and Denny froze like statues when they saw the guests enter. The bride and groom did not look happy at all now. Having somehow mastered their emotions, they waved to Victoria and her companion. Sandy reached out to the groom's ear and asked, "What is this drunk doing? You said that he would receive the money due to him and drove off to where no one could find him." "Denny, I'm scared. I'm afraid that Victoria has come up with some kind of terrible revenge." Denny hugged the bride, pulled her close, and replied, "But hardly. He's just a similar person. Victoria has a good visual memory. She may have guessed that it was no coincidence that her grandfather appeared on her doorstep, and so that I can get to her quickly and without suspicion. So she decided to annoy us. You could say demoralize, poison the joy of our happy day. I thought about it, recalled in my memory what this supposed Dimitri looked like, and hired someone. There are plenty of actors in the country dreaming of an easy way to make money. So relax, Sandy." Victoria and her companion tried to behave as if nothing had happened, and in no way stood out from the rest of the guests, either by excessive joy or even more so by gloomy expressions. Thanks to the lady manager, they almost instantly found their table and sat down decorously, waiting for the start of the holiday, which promised to be very unusual. Victoria was pleased to note how worried Sandy was looking at her, and, meeting her gaze, she smiled as sweetly as possible. She had absolutely no idea what kind of surprise Simon had prepared and was in anticipation of what was promised. At the signal from the manager, Sandy's parents brought a huge pie into the banquet hall, and the fun began in full swing. The guests congratulated the newlyweds in every possible way. The bride's parents sang a duet. The groom's aunt arranged a long presentation of small souvenirs accompanied by rhyming lines. Victoria became more and more worried, but Michael calmed her desperation, and when the manager announced their turn to congratulate the newlyweds, the man quietly whispered, "Victoria, our way out. Give me the right to speak and listen, and be glad that you found out about the real essence of your ex-fiancé in time." Victoria's companion, carefully supporting her, took a place in the middle of the hall. The experienced actor didn't even need a microphone. His well-trained voice, surprisingly, did not lose its sonority after many years of libations, was heard in all corners of the hall. "So, ladies and gentlemen, Madame and Monsieur, I suggest you pay attention to the screen." The manager turned off several rows of lamps, and the room became much darker. Suddenly, to the sounds of Mendelssohn's March, racy footage began to appear on the screen, showing the groom with other women. Michael accompanied the changing images with brief information about the names of the groom's beloved. Having come to his senses, Denny tried to shout down the unexpected guest and convince everyone else that the image on the screen was a photo montage, but the seed of doubt was sown. Sandy seemed completely unaware of her fiancé's loving nature, and after the photo of Denny and Victoria's company, shots of herself flashed, and then the unusual movie continued with the participation of other ladies. She slapped the groom in the face and began to shout at him, not embarrassed by those present. "You bastard. You said that we would deceive Victoria and live happily ever after. He persuaded me to help take the dance studio away from her. And then you got involved with me just for the sake of profit? How could I not have thought to follow you? I decided to have a wedding. And then what were your plans? Run away with the donated money and squeeze the business away from me too. Hate you." Finally, the display of the wrong Denny on the screen ended. The lights came on, and Simon entered the hall, accompanied by police officers, explained, "Unfortunately, the holiday will have to end. The main heroes of the occasion are suspected of fraud." Sandy's parents rushed to law enforcement officials to explain that a mistake had occurred, but the police were adamant. Denny and Sandy were handcuffed and led to the exit. When the ex-friend caught up with Victoria, the girl asked her a question. "No. Why did you do this to me? I have always considered you a person I can trust." Sandy grimaced and blurted, "You always got everything without problems. The first places are inherited. Even the students are drawn to you, not to me." Victoria was shocked. She tried to understand sincerely, as Sandy says. Did she really almost ruin her life? Indeed, because of the start, as Simon expected. Sandy spat angrily and admitted, "You have always been ever since the sports camp, and I was like a pale image with you. Do you know what I'll tell you? I was ever since I saw her dancing. If you really want to know, then it was I who tried to ruin your performance. It was because of me that the music stopped playing during your dance. Everything turned out in your favor." Sandy did not pay attention to anyone around her and, looking into her eyes, said, "The only moments when I was truly happy. Do you know which ones?" Victoria was silent, afraid to even guess, and Sandy smiled wryly and continued, "I was ready to jump with happiness. When you were suffering, it was just as difficult to hide your joy and feign sympathy." Sandy, distraught with emotion, tried to rush at Victoria, but it was not easy to do in handcuffs. The police took the detainee further. Lingso Ford remained standing in the middle of the hall. She had yet to come face to face with her ex-fiancé, but he passed by, barely glancing at the neckline. Victoria asked after him, "Denny, aren't you ashamed?" However, the man did not even turn around. Simeon, who approached the display case, said loudly, "Such people are never ashamed." At the request of her parents, Sandy Victoria did not make any claims regarding the money withdrawn from the account, and invested the compensation received in the amount of this amount into the development of a network of her dance studios. For her, the situation with her ex-girlfriend and fiancé became an excellent life lesson, and she was distrustful of the idea of dating that Simeon expressed. It took the private detective's assistant about 3 years for Victoria to finally believe in the sincerity of his feelings. Sam had been stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Half an hour ago, he was supposed to be at the reception the investor was having for his birthday. He'd driven straight from the clinic without even stopping home to change. His wife Stella called every 10 minutes to remind him not to be late, but he was late. Such a terrible traffic jam wasn't part of the plan. I don't know what happened there. The cars stood dead still, shifting a meter every 5 minutes, and then stop again. All the cars behind and front on the side were already considered, and the drivers could be considered familiar. That car overtook by half a meter, and now it was 1.5 meters behind. There's an old man with a Mazda in the front. Some sticks with red rags on the ends stick out of the trunk. On the left is a girl in an Audi. She talks on the phone all the time and occasionally looks at Sam with interest. On the right, the most desperate or the most brazen occasionally fly by on the side of the road. What's ahead of them is unknown. Sam wouldn't be nervous at all. Well, a traffic jam and a traffic jam. I can finally get some rest. He imagined what Stella would say to him when he got there. But if he did, the wife calls again. "Where are you? I don't know what to say. Everyone's here asking about you. You don't realize how important it is for you to be here." I really don't understand the importance. What I'm going to do there, I don't understand either. But I can't fly over this traffic jam. Can't or won't. "Stella, I'll be there as soon as I can." Sam dropped a call. He didn't need this reception. Let the investors talk to the clinic management. Why invite the department heads? What's the fun of celebrating a birthday in a crowd of people you don't know? Sam saw this investor once at the clinic. All of a sudden, he's honored to be invited, and he's with his wife. He would have preferred to go home, spend a quiet evening, read 2 interesting articles sent to him a month ago. Instead of that, he had to go to some party where he had to keep his face and socialize with uninteresting people, and he was indecently late. Stella, unlike her husband, was glad at the invitation. She had rarely been able to attend receptions of this level, or did she not want to look at others as much as she wanted to show herself? She realized that a school teacher herself was not interesting to anyone in this high society, but she was with her husband, and that husband, damn him, could not get there. But those who jump the curb, they go somewhere. Maybe we should try it. Sam drove to the curb, skipped about 500 meters, and again found himself in traffic, now on the curb. Further, the curb ended, and it was possible to pass only on the road, and those patiently standing in the row were not in a hurry to let those who liked freebies through. They wanted to cheat fate, so stand there now. In another half hour, Sam was back in the lane. A Mazda with sticks and red rags loomed ahead. Where he left off, he came back to. It's ironic. Looks like he's only coming to the appointment to pick up his wife. That's fine. It's a shame about the time, though. We're finally getting going. And soon the cause of the traffic jam became clear. A terrible accident. 3 cars and 1 truck. Rescue workers were scrambling around. People were pulled out of the cars. While the regime cars were moved to the side of the road like scrap metal, 1 lane was freed for traffic. Drivers cautiously drove around the crash site. Sam saw the wrecked cars of rescuers and ambulance doctors. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a man sitting on the ground by the truck's tire with a crazed look on his face. Clearly in shock, he turned toward the accident. The lifeguard immediately ran up to him and get back on the road. This isn't a circus. I'm a trauma doctor. Well, go ahead then, you're a trauma doctor. There were 10 victims, all with serious injuries. The guy was badly hurt. He had a spinal cord injury and a young woman who the rescuers couldn't get out of the car for a long time. Her 3-year-old daughter, terrified and crying, was examined in the ambulance. Doctors dealt with the heaviest. The others with fractures and injuries were waiting their turn. That's who Sam took care of. The ambulances went around, took the injured away. They were replaced by others. Everything that needed to be done was done. There was nothing more Sam could do. He called the clinic and get the OR ready. I'll be right there with the spinal trauma. Before leaving, walked over to the truck driver who was still sitting wheel to wheel. He was given a shot of sedative. His gaze became meaningful. You're injured. You need help. No, it's my fault, doctor. What's going to happen to me now? Not my question. He never made it to the appointment, didn't answer his wife's calls, was dealing with the injured guy. Passed out in his office. And in the morning began the usual endless hospital business. I didn't get home until the evening. Stella had cooled down a bit during the day. If her husband had arrived in the morning, she would have made a scandal, not in the tradition of their intelligent family. She realized that Sam wasn't just a good doctor. He's a top-notch specialist with a name and a reputation. He works hard and takes on the most difficult cases. He also manages to lecture. He's got time for everything except his wife. They don't go on vacation. They don't spend weekends together. Every night at home, lived, had dinner, tried to read some article in a scientific journal and flawed. Fell asleep. That was it. Stella couldn't remember when or what they'd talked about. Nothing. Most importantly, no desire. When their lives became separate, love had been replaced by indifference. Stella couldn't remember. If she told Sam now that their marriage was cracking at the seams and their life together was more like being neighbors, he'd be surprised. What's wrong? It's fine. Really normal. No scandals, no cheating. It's a quite secure, quiet life without troubles, without love, without happiness. The most unbearable thing is that it's impossible to forget how happy they were. Stella is young. Only after the institute, the teacher enthusiastically took up the education of the younger generation in a separate school where she was sent by the teachers of India. She sacredly believed that the power of words can protect students from bad deeds. The main thing is to explain correctly what is good and what is bad. The beautiful impulses of her soul touched the students. They agreed not to upset and only sort of took patronage over the young girl. Idealists were sure they in their 13 years about life know much more than you can imagine. All the class went on hikes, to screenings of movie novelties, went to the skating rink or beach volleyball tournament. That's how, in mutual illusions, Stella brought her class to graduation. Apparently, her pedagogical efforts were not in vain, because after graduation the students did not disappear from her life. congratulated her on her birthday and New Year, came with her troubles in just a chat. Teachers with great experience and merit believed that such trusting relations with students were an indicator of professional unsuitability. Our business is to give education, to make friends with students. In the height of unprofessionalism, there's not enough soul and time for everyone. Most likely, the usual envy to them for some reason did not go to pour out their souls. It was there at school that Stella met Sam. He was 12 years older than her, a grown-up and self-confident man. His son went to that school, and one day, instead of mom, Dad came to the parent-teacher conference. The teacher's passion for his work, something that did not fit into the canons of pedagogy, caught Sam's eye. He divorced his wife 3 years ago and hadn't been in touch at all. The separation from his son was too acrimonious. He saw each other occasionally. This day, he went to a parent-teacher conference for the first time in his life because the ex-wife suddenly called and broke into hysterics, demanded that he immediately abandoned all his mushroom business and ran to the school to save his son. She didn't explain what to save him from. Why she herself does not run was, in general, understandable, was not able to. Sam realized that nothing terrible had probably happened, but he went to school, need to be kept in the loop. And suddenly, Justin really needs to be rescued, if not from school, then from his mother. I haven't seen my son in a while. We need to talk. He was ready to take Justin to his place, but he was afraid that his wife, left alone, would go crazy, and Justin, feeling sorry for his mom, refused the offer to move in. Sam was worried, but he didn't think it was possible to pressure his son. The grown-up would figure it out on his own. After the meeting, Sam approached Stella. He really did not understand why his wife was so hysterical. In conflict with a classmate. It's not a disaster. It's just normal school life. Unpleasant, of course, but no reason to declare a rescue operation. Stella confirmed that there's no problem. Justin is a wonderful boy, a little withdrawn but kind and talented. Sam had already realized that she had everyone wonderful, talented. Sam from this bully will justify and find a lot of positive qualities in an amazing girl. There's not many like her left. Sam always came with flowers, gallant and courteous. Stella's friend, Elijah, a history teacher, told in colors how the teacher's office reacts to the fact that this girl, who does not belong in school, picked up such a fiancé. They are bursting with envy. They can't talk about anything but you. For them, teacher and nun are synonyms. You can't have a teaching career if you've got a man. Not like that. You hook a man, you bring him into the world, yes, but self-sufficient, independent, and will not appreciate your, and therefore their selfless labor. Happy, loved, prosperous woman. What can she teach her children? How will she prepare them for the rigors of life? We have half of our teachers married. Married ones are there, not happy ones. How would you know? Why do they give you a hard time? Why don't they just be happy? Tell me, if I was going to marry a good, positive man, what would you say? I'd wish him happiness. Not one of them would wish me happiness. They all feel evil and wonder when he'll leave you. I'm not going to marry you. But you do, without giving them a reason to gloat. You can't go back. Stella fell in love, so serious, so thorough. He even courted as if he had a plan. He was precise. It's understandable, the job, no free time. The fact that Sam was married didn't bother Stella. Strange if a man in his 40s had never been married. What did bother her was that she didn't want to hear from his ex-wife. Strange, so many years of marriage. One son's 15 years old, and Sam never said a kind word about her. What happened between them? Why'd they get divorced? Sam didn't tell. He just told Stella what he thought she needed to know. I wouldn't bring her up at all, but there's a son there. He's the one I've been helping and will continue to help. I think you understand. He's a grown-up, smart boy. He likes you. Don't worry, we'll be fine. It wasn't just fine. It was great. They took a little wedding trip, rented a beach house in Hawaii for a week. Sun, sea, and no one but the two of them. Not because there was no one, there was just no need for anyone. Stella looked at her husband, and in her head beat only one thought about love. About how it happened that of all the men on earth, the best and most unusual got her. She was ready to look at those gray and most beautiful eyes all day long, as no one had ever been so happy. She began to seriously doubt her mental faculties as she bought parts that she could think of nothing but husband love, happiness. All the following years, when suddenly the longing rolled in, Stella remembered a week of boundless and unconditional happiness. And on the soul flowed, she so wanted to return to that place and experience the same feelings, to remember how to be happy. For 7 years of their life together, She had never traveled anywhere with her husband. Love, of course, did not go anywhere, but became something ordinary, not causing the former delight. When he did not come to that ill-fated reception, Stella seriously offended. He left her alone among strangers. No one cared about her. The doctors at the clinic tried not to leave her alone, but everyone was in pairs. Everyone was a little uncomfortable, basically an intruder. When anyone looked at her, she seemed to feel sorry for her, perplexed as to who she was, what she was doing here. She still hoped Sam would come when he stopped answering his phone. Stella called a cab and went home. She'd had enough of this embarrassment. At home, she stood in front of the mirror. A tall, slender woman in an elegant dress with a beautiful and intelligent face looked at her. She also felt sorry for this beauty. She cried. She had gathered so much, dreaming that everyone would appreciate their beautiful couple, would say compliments, and Sam would be proud of his wife. Instead of compliments and difference, instead of a pleasant evening of longing and loneliness. And now she stands so beautiful, looks at herself and quietly winks at the fact that no one needs her beauty, not even her husband. She cried, she was angry. Then she calmed down, decided there's no point in getting herself worked up. He'll come and explain everything. Sam came. Stella didn't expect anything. Not an explanation or an apology. Didn't even ask how she'd spent the evening. Either he doesn't remember about the damn reception, or he thinks it's nothing. Nothing to talk about. She's eating dinner, reading a magazine. She's gonna fall asleep. Here Stella could not stand it. Went to her husband, pulled the magazine from his hands, threw it on the floor, and, looking into Sam's surprised eyes, asked, "Where on earth did you go yesterday? Aren't you interested in how I had fun? You left me alone and now you don't even want to explain? I had to go back to the clinic, Stella. I'm tired." Sam picked up a magazine from the floor and continued reading, and that was it. Amazingly, such impenetrable indifference. How wretched became on his soul. What would it take for him to come out of his shell and show some feeling? Change, die. I wonder if he'll notice or not. It's good to be distracted from work again. Another sleepless night and desperate morning loneliness. This morning was neither good nor wise. In any case, neither was the evening. Not a single wise thought had bitten through the night. What to do with her personal life going downhill? Stella decided to take the tried and tested route. She should go to Elise. She always had a way of setting things right. Her loyal friend Alyssa was a big fan of Sam. Stella thought she was mad about nothing. There are no other husbands like that, and from the height of experience you can see. She had been married twice over the years and considered herself an expert on husbands, both her own and other people. Her first husband was either an artist, a musician, or a poet. Basically, 3 in 1. Life with him had been a joyous, exhilarating experience. Eliza said that mostly in her head he was fun and unpredictable, an unrecognized talent, an underachiever, a boy who hadn't grown up. Eliza said her husband was like trained animals in the circus, kind of trained, but it was unclear what to expect from him, and hung on my chassis from lack of money. Elise went to the other extreme. Her second husband was a boring middle-aged official. Not young, not attractive, but with means and connections. The presence of a young and beautiful wife sharply raised his authority in the eyes of colleagues, so money for his doll he did not spare. In addition, his wife is a schoolteacher somehow not on the status, so now Eliza taught at the university. All would be nothing, but to bear his boring Elijah long could not. She got divorced and got a nice apartment in the center of the city from a wallet with ears as a payoff. Now she was in full chocolate and in active search of the next husband. Honey honestly thought her friend was lucky. Handsome, intelligent, and a great doctor. Not a nerd, does not drink, does not cheat. What else do you need? She herself had never had such love as Stella had. She could only dream and envy. She showed up darker than a cloud with weeping eyes. What's the matter with you? He doesn't notice me at all. If I disappeared, he'd understand. He doesn't always eat dinner at home, so he won't know I'm missing. He doesn't care about me at all. When I went to college, I consulted him. I couldn't make up my mind, and he asked me a month ago how I was doing at school. Estelle, aren't you exaggerating? Something doesn't add up in my head. This isn't about Sam. I mean, he's an adequate man. I mean, yes, he's very passionate about his work, but that's good. Who's so caught up in work that they forget their wife when they visit? What do you think? I don't, though maybe it would be better. At least it would be clearer. You, girlfriend, quit blaming it on your husband. He's tired. He'll come to his senses and everything will be fine. For a man like your Sam, there's a lot more to look for. What a man. I'll put it in a basket and leave it in the woods. So my friend, where are you? Wasn't this enough? What kind of art is this? I'll take them out. I'll throw them. Throw them away. They'll pick them up right away. Look, I really don't understand what's wrong with you. There's no such thing as crazy, lifelong love. You had it, but I didn't. 2 husbands and not one out of this world love. You're their lucky one, aren't you? And maybe you're right. What's the matter? I'm coming to you again with my problem. That's always welcome. My vest is always at your service. A few days later, all the news programs started with breaking news. Another earthquake had struck. The country watched with bated breath the statistics of the dead and injured. Rescuers and doctors from all over the country flew to the scene. Sam was going to be part of one of the teams. Stella, you have to understand, I cannot fly there. I'm needed more now. Don't worry, I'll be home in a week. Stella watched the news like a bulletin from the front. One day she saw Sam in a story about doctors. Worried called, he answered. But it always made her heart ache, and she chased the dark thoughts away. I mean, he stays out of the rubble. He's helping the ones who've had enough. Suddenly there's a new jolt. More dead and wounded. Sam hasn't called in 2 days. Hasn't answered his cell phone. Finally, Sam's calling. No, it's not Sam. The number's a stranger. Yes, I'm listening. Is this Stella? Yes. Your husband, Sam, was killed in the debris removal. I'm sorry for your loss. We're covering all transportation costs. We're covering what? What transportation? Are they talking about Sam? What do you mean, Dad? Are they all crazy? Stella dialed Sam's number. He didn't answer for some reason. She heard a ringing in her ears, then some rumbling. It was someone banging on the door. I got up, went to the door, stood looking at it, didn't know how to open it. Or something unpleasant. They just told me. I can't remember. Who's knocking like that? There's a bell. Stella opened it. Standing outside the door were fellow doctors from the clinic. So, are they here? Sam's not home? No birthday party either, I guess. Or suddenly it was clear in my head that he'd died. Condolences. Stella didn't remember anything else. She woke up when the coffin was lowered into the grave, screamed. She was held in someone's arms and screamed and screamed. The next thing I know, it's foggy again. Like Eliza, like they were saying something about Justin feeding or something. When I came to, I was surprised I was alive. I was upset that I was alive. Eliza, like a guardian angel, always stood behind me and kept me from falling into the abyss, calming her down, talking her through it. After a couple months, you could talk to Stella without fear of going crazy. Honestly, Eliza hadn't expected Stella to be so broken by it. Understandably, a loved one had died. Eliza had been looking after everything herself. Stella's recovered, back to her normal life. It's dreary, but it's manageable. The thoughts are gone. She can't live without him. At least she's trying. Things have settled down. At night, she cried. Sometimes I even forgot to suffer during the day. Then I remembered I'd suffered enough. It was almost 6 months after Sam's death, when Eliza suddenly asked, Stella, have you applied for the inheritance? What application? Why? Actually, your husband had property, at least this apartment here, for Sam's apartment, by the way, and he has a son as an heir. The ex-wife can't claim, but the son can. I suspect you and Justin will have to share the apartment. And if he doesn't inherit, there's nothing to split. So I want you to run to the notary tomorrow with the paperwork. It hadn't occurred to Stella that she would have to share the apartment she'd lived in for so many years, used to thinking of it as her own. Only now, after what Elise had said, did she realize that it wasn't. She's registered here. She can't be kicked out, but it's not her apartment. The notary turned out to be a young girl with stern eyes and a not at all respectable ponytail on top of her head. She looked at the documents, accepted the color of the application, and thoroughly explained that Stella by law inherits half of the apartment, half of the car and half of the dacha, advised to make arrangements with the second heir Justin how to divide it all. Who gets the car? Who gets the dacha? Who gets the apartment? Stella was ready to give up the car and the dacha if they left her the apartment. She simply had nowhere to live, realized not equally. Justin probably wouldn't have minded, but his mom was still there. Some strange message came through, land and property tax arrears. Stella thought at first it was for the cottage and the apartment. But why in her name? The all-knowing Elijah advised to go and find out what the tricks were. Oh, counselor, I am tormented by a vague doubt. It's no good. I wouldn't be surprised if the ex-wife is up to some mischief. but to sign over the property to you so you don't have to pay taxes is dumb, even for her. And last year's taxes, maybe Sam signed something over to you? Yeah, we didn't buy anything at all. Everything we have was bought 100 years ago. At the registry, Stella was given a statement of ownership for a plot of land and a house of 53 square meters. What house? She'd have to deal with the apartment. The only thing missing was the house. Life was getting a little too jumpy. Unable to understand, Stella called Sam's friend, Simon. Simon, tell me, did Sam say something to you about a house in the country? It's a lovely cottage. I loved it there. Layla and I stayed there for a month last year. Sam said he bought it to grow into a cottage, and he's going to build it up and live there when he takes a well-deserved vacation. Why didn't I know anything? And why did he sign it over to me? That's what I understand, since he's older than you. He knew he was leaving early and wanted you to have something of your own. And he didn't tell you because he wanted to build a palace for the princess first and then bring the princess to the palace. Who knew he wouldn't make it in time? I'm sorry. What are we going to do with this palace now? Whatever you want. But I wouldn't sell it if I were you. Really, it's a wonderful place. You should go and see it. The doorbell rang. Stella said a quick goodbye to Simon and went to open the door. Standing outside the door was a not quite sober woman with dyed hair, shaking her red curls. Without waiting for an invitation, she stepped into the apartment and walked to the room. Who are you? Me. Who are you? My son is the landlord of the apartment. I want to live with my son. You don't have children. You don't understand. I'm going to live with my son. But Justin only owns half the apartment, and the other half is mine. You're fine. We'll live together. I'll take roommates. How are we going to divide up the rooms? Look, you can't be serious. We can't live in the same apartment. I wouldn't want to, but if you don't move out, we'll have to. You think about it. I'll bring my stuff the day after tomorrow. Bye. What do we do now? What do you do in a situation like this? Run to a friend's house. So Stella ran down the road to the little house. She called Justin, asked him to come over. I wanted to know, was the idea of living together her mom's fantasy? Justin wasn't reassured. The decision to squeeze Stella out of Stella's apartment was Sam's revenge, albeit belated. Justin talked his mom down, offered her options. She wouldn't listen. She didn't need the apartment as much as she wanted to. She wouldn't back down. She'd ruin her life any way she could. Justin left. The girlfriends were left to grieve. It's important to humiliate me. She dreams how she will humiliate me, ruin my life. For such a pleasure will not take money. Justin realizes that it's impossible to live like this, but he can't do anything. She has this idea of moving in with me. She's having fun and getting revenge for her miserable life. You should have seen her. She's got an agenda. To kill me. That's the kind of joy she wouldn't pass up. Look, is this crazy woman really going to live with her ex-husband's widow? I guess so. If you move in with me, you'll live with me for a while, but then you'll have to do something about the apartment. Sell it? Split it up? Well, I don't know, of course. You're on the prowl and I'm in the way. No, girlfriend, I'm not my enemy. I don't want to be without a friend. And who do you want to stay with? Something abnormal in the same apartment. Are you seriously considering it? No, of course not. I have an unfinished palace. I'm going to go see it. Where? It's an abandoned area. It's nothing like that. I've only looked 200 kilometers from here. I need to get my bearings. I'll go. Then I'll wake up and decide how to go on with my life. Elise, I feel like I need this. If I don't try to start my life over, it's going to get worse. Well, I don't know. Maybe it really will work out. The decision seems to be made. But it is so scary to change the established, stable life for the unclear prospect of life in the palace, in which I have never been. But then some builders showed up, measured the height of the opening and wondered which walls were load bay. Clearly, some grand renovation was in progress. Woman, are you registered here? Well, live here. No one is forcing you out. And we have an order. Sveta quickly threw her things into her bag and rushed to the bus station. She didn't wait for the redhead to show up. In the queue at the ticket office, suddenly remembered. I have a car. They kicked me out of my apartment, so at least I could get a car. I didn't doubt they'd track her car. They wouldn't deny themselves such a pleasure. But for now, she could drive to the village. Where am I going? What for? How am I going to live? Okay, I'll get there. I'll figure it out. Strange place, not a lantern, not a light. Either they're asleep or there's no lights. So where to next? Where's there to the estate? Yeah, here come the people. Crawled out to have a look. At least they'll tell me where to go. They did. But they were wary of what the lady had brought in the middle of the night. There must be a candle somewhere. But how can you find it here? I shined the flashlight on my phone, found a bed, and went to sleep. She'll figure it out tomorrow. I couldn't sleep with hunger. I ate all the cookies I had on the road. That's it. Go to sleep. There's nothing else. Waking up, Stella did not immediately realize where she was. There is no light. We have to look at the property. And also very hungry. I'll have to look for a store. Stella's house impressed her. Nice furniture, big windows, curtains, dishes, fridge, TV, everything. I could tell Sam really wanted to live here. Everything's been thought out and arranged with love. He didn't tell her anything, but he made it look like he'd consulted her. Stella wouldn't change a thing about this house. She liked everything about it. The house was neglected and unkept, but that could be fixed. She stepped out onto the porch. It was beautiful, a real garden. Lilacs blooming, apple trees in pink colors, some bushes, the name of which Stella did not know. Raspberries grew all over the plot under the apple trees. There was a table in the thicket, a rope swing hanging from a branch. The ropes were almost rotten. One, the house impassable thickets are a solid wall. Later I'll have to climb the plot to see what else grows here. But now it's not about flowers and berries. I had to find a store and buy food because I was so hungry I felt dizzy. There was salt, sugar, macaroni, a pack of tea, and a bottle of sunflower oil in the refrigerator, probably hidden from the mice. Stella took out the groceries, turned on the refrigerator, and went to look for from behind a neighboring fence. A woman in her 60s looked at her with curiosity. She came closer and called out, "Daughter, who are you going to be?" The house was standing empty. I looked today. Someone is walking in the yard. "Sam, the owner, is here, the doctor from town. Are you his wife?" "Widow," Stella said the word aloud for the first time. It came out sharp, harsh, hopeless. Divided life into before and after. "Oh, I'm sorry, you old fool. I'm minding my own business. My name is Violetta, and I'm Stella. Can you tell me where your store is?" "Right down the street. You walk to the center. There's the store, the school, and the administration. You can come to me if you need anything." "Thank you, Violetta." Stella walked down the street, looking around the village. It was interesting and completely different from her idea of this life. Once upon a time, while still studying at the institute, she had gone to visit a friend. It was the first and only experience of such a life. Since then, Stella was sure that such an area is dusty, with downy grass, old houses, vegetable gardens with potatoes and cucumbers, and of course, no decorations in the form of flowers and ornamental bushes. This is poverty, lack of amenities, and hard work. It's no time for flowers. Either this one was in the middle of nowhere, or modern things had changed dramatically. But now Stella was pleasantly surprised. There were good houses here, a well-tended front garden in front of each yard. Even the streets were not gray and dusty, but green with flowering trees and bushes. The appearance of a new person in the village is an event. As she walked to the store, curious eyes peered from behind every fence. "Wakes about 15 times, Stella said. Hello, and explained who she was. Vigilance in the village was at an all-time high. No one disappeared unnoticed. Somehow the rumors got to the store before Stella did. 10 people came to see the town girl. The store was full. No one bought anything. That's not why they came. They waited, wondering why she had come and how long she could hold out. They're not mean people, but they're wary of anything new. And their own people, they've all been studied up and down. It's clear what to expect from whom. This one will give his shirt off his back. This one is eager to help everyone. This one's a slacker. But they're all family. And here's some strange woman who's arrived. They say she's young and beautiful. That's a problem too. There are only 3 single men in the village. We're short of men, and here's a competitor." They looked at Stella, frankly, and evaluating. They began to question her cautiously. "You're beautiful. Are you coming to us for a long time or just for a week's rest?" "No, I'll stay here for a week. I don't know how long, though." "What are you going to do? You must be some kind of manager, right? Or a designer. You don't know how to work with your hands in the city." "I'm a teacher." "That's good. We have a big school. We need teachers. But it's hard to live in the countryside. In winter it gets so snowy that you can't leave the house. It's good that we have gas and don't need to heat stoves, and you can't live without a vegetable garden, and they don't bring vegetables here." "Don't frighten the man," the saleswoman interceded. "I don't bring vegetables. You won't buy them. But I'll bring them if I have to." "No way. Who eats these store-bought vegetables? Can't we share cucumbers and tomatoes? You, daughter, come to my place. I still have some potatoes and carrots left." "Thanks. Do you want to buy anything? If not, go home. It's like a social club in here." Stella picked up the groceries. It's a bit heavy. She also needed a bucket, a mop, dishwashing detergent, window cleaner, and a few other little things. I can't carry everything. You're gonna clean up, yeah? The house has been closed up since last summer. It's been filthy. Let's do it this way. You take what you need now. I'll bring the rest of the stuff along with all the cleaning supplies to you in a couple hours. I've got a bag of stuff I'm taking home for lunch. So I loaded it all up, and after work, I'll come and help you. Otherwise, you'll be cleaning this house for a week. My name is Veronica, by the way. Yeah, it's embarrassing. Come on, I'm curious to know what kind of bird you are. Let's get acquainted. Oh, I'm Stella. You don't have to tell me. The whole village knows. Stella came out of the store, looked around. There's the school. You can see the kids running around in the yard. It was either physical education or some kind of training. I'll have to go in and see what vacancies they have. See if I really have to stay here. So where do we start our new life? We should make some food. No, sandwich and tea first, then cooking. After the sandwich, Stella thought things were going well. Life was getting better. Veronica's bringing in some chemicals. The first thing to do is to clean the windows to get more sun and shine. Stella looked around the house. It hadn't been much of a morning. Gray furniture, dim windows, dusty curtains. If everything was washed, it would be cozy. Where's Veronica? I can't wait. Veronica arrived as promised with her fiancé, a handsome, smiling blonde. Maybe he wasn't a fiancé, but he showed interest, looked interested, obviously tried to please Veronica. His name was, that's it, we're off. Alex has to go to work. Veronica pushed Alex toward the door. I'll pick up the monkey from the garden tonight and come over. What monkey? But Veronica was already running to the car. The monkey turned out to be a little red-haired girl named Alice, Veronica's daughter. With helpers, the work went faster, and during the evening, they managed to clean almost the whole house. Some little things remained. Tired but encouraged by the result, sat down to drink tea. True, the monkey didn't reach the tea and fell asleep. Veronica, who is Alex. They say there are only 3 bachelors here. You should see those bachelors, laughed Veronica. The most eligible is Uncle Max. He's about 60 years old. There's nothing in it for you. He's been courting your neighbor for about 30 of his 60 years. He's been doing it his whole life. He's never gotten around to proposing. And the second bachelor, not even the hottest 40-somethings look back. He went to D.C. They say that the computer genius works from home, lives with his mom, does not go anywhere, does not talk to anyone. His mom told me he was married. Nobody believes it. Someone considers him abnormal, but all agreed that he is not suitable for socializing, let alone marriage. The third bachelor is a dark horse, but, according to Veronica, a very interesting man. 2 years ago, a man came to the village with a teenage daughter. Everyone decided he was a former athlete. First of all, he looked so strong. Secondly, he came to the school director and offered to open a boxing section. The principal was not against it. The case is good, but not feasible. The school gym had not been working for several years. There was no money for repairs. The hall was almost in disrepair. Physical education lessons were held outside, running in soccer in summer, skiing in winter. Then Russell, the athlete's name, disappeared from the village for a while. Then he came back with a decision to finance the renovation of the gym and a coaching position. That's when it turned out that the 3-time American boxing champion lives in their village. True, he has long ago refused to participate in the World Championship, and why no one knows how he ended up here is also a mystery. But local all signs assured that here without a woman did not do without. His daughter, too, did not open with anyone, seriously engaged in boxing. Russell took her to competitions. Our girls, of course, revived, poked fun, but to no avail. He's kind of withdrawn and unloved. It's like he and his daughter don't need anyone. He's only friends with the school principal. Where did you get your Alex? Or is he married? Oh, come on. It's too expensive to get involved with married people. We had a couple of such stories here. They didn't end well. Alex is from a neighboring village nearby. Things used to be different here. Kids from the neighboring villages used to go to school here. The school bus brought those who were close by. Children from distant villages lived in the boarding school. Veronica and Alex had known each other since they came to the 1st grade. As Alex told, later he fell in love with Veronica in the 4th grade. Veronica was a windy girl. She liked one boy or the other. And it wasn't until her senior year of high school that she paid attention to Alex. But what a true, youthful love it was. For life, of course. When it was impossible to breathe without each other, they drew a calendar and crossed out the days until the age of 18, when they could get married. Their parents didn't mind, but thought it was a little early. Veronica went to college. Alex went into the army, and Veronica was surrounded by city life, new impressions, new acquaintances, new love. Veronica got pregnant, and the future father suddenly disappeared. He didn't appreciate the happiness. Veronica cried and cried and cried and went back to her mom. She cried and cried and cried and cried and "I told you so," and hugged her daughter and began to prepare for the birth of the child. Veronica avoided Alex. She was ashamed to look into his eyes, but at night she cried. She felt so sorry for her first love. That's it. Her love life was over. There will be no love, no family in her life. Joy, red-haired Alice, her mother's happiness. Alex couldn't forget as Veronica tried to live without her, but it didn't work. "You know, Stella, he says he can't live without me. We have to be together. We've lost so much time. I don't believe it. How can you forgive betrayal? I've chosen my fate. I'm fine, and I don't need anyone. But he keeps coming and coming. Everything's fine. I'm soaked to the skin." She chose her fate. Ask your fate. Maybe she doesn't like your choice. You're being given a chance to get it all back, to be happy. So grab it. I can't get anything back. There's no chance. Oh, Stella, I'm sorry. I'm sitting here complaining. I'm such an idiot. Veronica, if you love me, don't be stupid. So you've made a lot of mistakes without making the main one. You won't be able to read it to yourself later. Oh no, look, what a time. Veronica picked up the sleepy fox, or my little bunny. It's a pity to wake her up, but she's already big. Well, that's it. Bye. I'll see you tomorrow. Veronica, thanks for your help. For a couple more days, Stella cleaned everything. The house became clean, cozy. It's beautiful. If I could just get the plot sorted out, I'd have a manor house. But she couldn't handle the plot alone. She'd need brute force. Well, she'd have to do it slowly. Sitting at home all day was a bit boring. Stella decided that it was time to go out into the world, at least to go to school. For some reason, Stella imagined the headmaster of the village school as an old man with glasses, shortness of breath, and a tired look of a man tortured by problems. But he turned out to be young and energetic. When Principal Allen learned that a certified, experienced English teacher had come to visit him, he was overjoyed. "Stella, you can't imagine how we work here. Here I am a math teacher. I also teach physics. Chemist teaches biology, geography, and English is taught by a history teacher. You understand what level of knowledge? We have only German among foreign languages, and there are no other teachers. We study in 2 shifts. It's not because there are too many students or not enough space, it's because there aren't enough teachers. Come on, I'll show you the school." Alan talked about the school only in the superlative form, proud. Stella had not expected that a school in the countryside could be equipped as well as any city school. The chemistry lab, the computer science room, the language class, all at the highest level. Maybe the repairs are simpler, but the atmosphere is homelike. It is cozy here in the gym. In the far corner, there was a boxing ring. Students were crowding around it. Judging by the emotions and cheers, something very interesting was going on there. Stella didn't understand anything about boxing. She thought it was a muzzle beater. What kind of sport is it where they hit each other over the head all the time? Alan walked toward the ring. Stella preferred to watch from afar. She couldn't even watch it on TV, much less live. In the ring, the fight was over. The athletes took off their helmets. And Stella was amazed to see only that a girl was waving her fist in the ring. A short, frail, pretty, about 15 years old. Her coach came up to her, tall, sturdy, with the powerful arms. He put his arm around the girl, said something, and she nodded, and Russell, the principal, waved his hand at the coach. "Come here. I have practice. Your practice can wait. Go, I say." Principals are on a first-name basis with students. Okay, friends. But there are professional ethics. After all, a bump on the head doesn't go unnoticed. "Stella, this is Russell, the coach. He's got all the boys here. He's got the little ones and the ones who've already left school. Russell, Stella will be teaching English, I hope." Hello, the coach looked huge up close. He looked sideways, not at all friendly. He didn't care. Not about Stella, not about English. A rude bore. He could have pretended to be pleasant. I'm surprised his children aren't afraid of him. The girl who had just fought in the ring approached him. Alan cracked a smile. "That's Susan, our pride, the champion. Daddy says she's very capable of making a place for herself in the big sport." "That's my daughter," Russell said. "Oh, I'm Stella. You don't have to tell me. The whole village knows." Stella came out of the store, looked around. There's the school. You can see the kids running around in the yard. It was either physical education or some kind of training. I'll have to go in and see what vacancies they have. We'll see if I really have to stay here. So where do we start our new life? We should make some food. No, sandwich and tea first, then cooking. After the sandwich, Stella thought things were going well. Life was getting better. Veronica's bringing in some chemicals. The first thing to do is to clean the windows to get more sun and shine. Stella looked around the house. It hadn't been much of a morning. Gray furniture, dim windows, dusty curtains. If everything was washed, it would be cozy. Where's Veronica? I can't wait. Veronica arrived as promised with her fiancé, a handsome, smiling blonde. Maybe he wasn't a fiancé, but he showed interest, looked interested, obviously tried to please Veronica. His name was Alex. That's it, we're off. Alex has to go to work. Veronica pushed Alex toward the door. I'll pick up the monkey from the garden tonight and come over. What monkey? But Veronica was already running to the car. The monkey turned out to be a little red-haired girl named Alice, Veronica's daughter. With helpers, the work went faster, and during the evening, they managed to clean almost the whole house. Some little things remained. Tired, but encouraged by the result, sat down to drink tea. True, the monkey didn't reach the tea and fell asleep. And Veronica, who is Alex, they say there are only 3 bachelors here. You should see those bachelors. Laughed Veronica. The most eligible was Uncle Max. He's about 60 years old. There's nothing in it for you. He's been courting your neighbor for about 30 of his 60 years. He's been doing it his whole life. He's never gotten around to proposing. And the second bachelor, not even the hottest 40-somethings look back. He went to D.C. They say that the computer genius works from home, lives with his mom, does not go anywhere, does not talk to anyone. His mom told me he was married. Nobody believes it. Someone considers him, but all agree that he is not suitable for socializing, let alone marriage. The third bachelor is a dark horse, but according to Veronica, a very interesting man. 2 years ago, a man came to the village with a teenage daughter. Everyone decided he was a former athlete. First of all, he looked so strong, trim. Secondly, he came to the school director and offered to open a boxing section. The principal was not against it. The case is good, but not feasible. The school gym had not been working for several years. There was no money for repairs. The hall was almost in disrepair. Physical education lessons were held outside, running and soccer in summer, skiing in winter. Then Russell, the athlete's name, disappeared from the village for a while. Then he came back with a decision to finance the renovation of the gym and a coaching position. That's when it turned out that the 3-time American boxing champion lives in their village. True, he has long ago refused to participate in the world championship, and why no one knows how he ended up here is also a mystery. But local, all signs assured that here without a woman did not do without. His daughter, too, did not open with anyone, seriously engaged in boxing. Russell took her to competitions. Our girls, of course, revived, poked fun, but to no avail. He's kind of withdrawn and unloved. It's like he and his daughter don't need anyone. He's only friends with the school principal. Where did you get your Alex? Or is he married? Oh, come on. It's too expensive to get involved with married people. We had a couple of such stories here. They didn't end well. Alex is from a neighboring village nearby. Things used to be different here. Kids from the neighboring villages used to go to school here. The school bus brought those who lived close by. Children from distant villages lived in the boarding school. Veronica and Alex had known each other since they came to the 1st grade. As Alex told later, he fell in love with Veronica in the 4th grade. Veronica was a windy girl. She liked one boy or the other. And it wasn't until her senior year of high school that she paid attention to Alex. But what a true youthful love it was. For life, of course. When it was impossible to breathe without each other, they drew a calendar and crossed out the days until the age of 18, when they could get married. Their parents didn't mind, but thought it was a little early. Veronica went to college. Alex went into the army. And Veronica was surrounded by city life, new impressions, new acquaintances, new love. Veronica got pregnant, and the future father suddenly disappeared. He didn't appreciate the happiness. Veronica cried and went back to her mom. She cried and cried and cried and cried and I told you so. Hugged her daughter and began to prepare for the birth of the child. Veronica avoided Alex. She was ashamed to look into his eyes, but at night she cried. She felt so sorry for her first love. That's it. Her love life was over. There will be no love, no family in her life. It was only joy, red-haired Alice, her mother's happiness. Alex couldn't forget his Veronica, tried to live without her, but it didn't work. You know, Stella, he says, he can't live without me. We have to be together. We've lost so much time. I don't believe it. How can you forgive betrayal? Version my fate. I'm fine, and I don't need anyone. But it keeps coming and coming. Everything's fine. I'm soaked to the skin. She chose her fate. Ask your fate. Maybe she doesn't like your choice. You're being given a chance to get it all back, to be happy. So grab it. I can't get anything back. There's no chance. Oh, Stella. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here complaining. I'm such an idiot. Veronica, if you love me, don't be stupid. So you've made a lot of mistakes without making the main one. You won't be able to read it to yourself later. Oh, look, what a time. Veronica picked up the sleepy fox for my little bunny. It's a pity to wake her up, but she's already big. Well, that's it, bye. I'll see you tomorrow. Veronica, thanks for your help. For a couple more days, Stella cleaned everything. The house became clean, cozy, lived in. It's beautiful. If I could just get the plot sorted out, I'd have a manor house, but she couldn't handle the plot alone. She'd need brute force. Well, she'd have to do it slowly. Sitting at home all day was a bit boring. Stella decided that it was time to go out into the world, at least to go to school. For some reason, Stella imagined the headmaster of the village school as an old man with glasses, shortness of breath and a tired look of a man tortured by problems. But he turned out to be young and energetic. When Principal Allen learned that a certified, experienced English teacher had come to visit him, he was overjoyed. Stella, you can't imagine how we work here. Here I am a math teacher. I also teach physics. Chemist teaches biology, geography, and English is taught by a history teacher. You understand what level of knowledge. We have only German among foreign languages, and there are no other teachers. We study in 2 shifts. It's not because there are too many students or not enough space, it's because there aren't enough teachers. Come on, I'll show you the school. Alan talked about the school only in the superlative form. Proud. Stella had not expected that a school in the countryside could be equipped as well as any city school. The chemistry lab, the computer science room, the language class, all at the highest level. Maybe the repairs are simpler, but the atmosphere is home-like. It is cozy here in the gym. In the far corner there was a boxing ring. Students were crowding around it, judging by the emotions and cheers. Something very interesting was going on there. Stella didn't understand anything about boxing. She thought it was a muzzle beater. What kind of sport is it, where they hit each other over the head all the time? Alan walked toward the ring. Stella preferred to watch from afar. She couldn't even watch it on TV, much less live. In the ring the fight was over, the athletes took off their helmets. And Stella was amazed to see only that a girl was waving her fists in the ring. A short, frail, pretty, about 15 years old. Her coach came up to her. Tall, sturdy, with powerful arms. He put his arm around the girl, said something, and she nodded and agreed. Russell, the principal, waved his hand at the coach. Come here. I have practice. Your practice can wait. Go, I say. Principals are on a first-name basis with students. Okay, friends, but there are professional ethics. After all, a bump on the head doesn't go unnoticed. Stella, this is Russell, the coach. He's got all the boys here. He's got the little ones and the ones who already left school. Russell, Stella will be teaching English, I hope. Hello, the coach looked huge up close. He looked sideways, not at all friendly. He didn't care. Not about Stella, not about English. A rude bore. He could have pretended to be pleasant. I'm surprised his children aren't afraid of him. A girl who just fought in the ring approached him. Alan cracked a smile. That's Susan, our pride, the champion. Daddy says she's very capable of making a place for herself in the big sport. That's my daughter, Russell said. I'm sorry, it's probably none of my business. But aren't you scared for your daughter? It's not a woman's sport. It's none of your business. All right, this conversation is over. Time to go. Alan, thanks for the tour. I'll bring the documents tomorrow. Goodbye. Stella walked towards the exit of the hall. She heard the principal quietly reprimand Russell. You what? What do you want? You don't hold a grudge against Daddy. Susan caught up with Stella, who forgot how to talk to women. How are you settling in here? Would you like some help? I'm afraid Daddy would mind, wouldn't he? No, he won't. He's not mean, he's just unhappy. He needs to socialize with people too. And he doesn't want to. I mean, he's not here with anyone else either. Let's be friends. And Papa, I'm sorry, I know he has a guilty conscience. He'll apologize tomorrow. Okay, we'll see. And you, Susan, come by if you get bored. She is such a sweet girl, and she loves her daddy. I wonder why she called him miserable. Something terrible must have happened. If a man is so closed in himself, shutting himself off from everyone. Stella liked school, the principal. She decided she'd be comfortable in her new job. One unpleasant person doesn't make the weather. She's not interested in boxing. So, the coach can be ignored, communication can be minimized. She is starting a new life, excitement about the imminent changes. No one can bring her down from the joyful mood. Not even someone as unpleasant as Russell. Stella caught herself thinking that whatever she was thinking about this very coach. That was all she needed. What did she care about him? Stella brought her diploma in employment history to school, wrote an application, and was hired. Too bad it's the end of the school year, but from September everything will go according to plan. And now there is time to evaluate the equipment of the classroom, to add something to it, to correct it, to prepare the curriculum. There was a lot of enthusiasm, and also sat up from home in the office, often ran into Susan, chatted, helped. Although Stella stopped communicating with Russell, but we had to see each other. He, after training, often found Susan in the office of English. By the way, for the introduction scene, he apologized, just as Susan said he would. Communication was very economical. Hello, goodbye, how are you? Sabate finally got to work on the plot. She had a long time to gather her courage, telling herself it was no big deal. The others are doing fine. In full uniform, gloves, galoshes with a shovel and a hacksaw, went to war on cherry bushes up to half a meter high. Dug them out. They have roots. Up to the center of the earth. What do they grow? Something to dig up? I sawed something long and hard. I got tired, sat under the apple tree, upset. There's no sawing, no sawing. There's enough for the whole summer. So tired, so disappointed. Susan caught her. Stella, you can't do it here. You need heavy power. I'll tell Daddy, he'll help. No, that's not a good idea. It's okay, it's not a bad idea. It's vacation time. School kids don't go to practice. Only adults. And that's 3 times a week. He made borscht yesterday out of idleness. He'll start embroidering soon. He'd better put his strength to good use. The next day, Russell came in. Stella felt so embarrassed. He'd think she was the kind of girl who looked for an excuse to get into a house. Every single woman around here tried that. I didn't ask for it. She thought she heard Russell chuckle. He shouldn't have. The awkwardness was gone. So angry, he'd be great. You're only needed. Here is a tractor. Sveta lifted her chin and pointed with a royal gesture. The shovel is over there. Russell was visible from the window. She pretended she wasn't at all interested in what he was doing there, but she tried to peek discreetly. No sympathy for this man with a nasty temper, of course. But to say he wasn't handsome wouldn't be true. Then Russell moved to another corner. You couldn't see him from the window. Stella, not visible. 3 hours later. Stella thought she was being indecent. Took the bottle, went behind the house, and was surprised there were no thickets. 5 gorgeous cherry trees along the fence, some bushes. Just a delight. Russell was tired and asked for water to wash his face. Stella brought a bucket of water. Russell took off his shirt and splashed the water. Stella didn't look, but her eyes were squinting in that direction. Veronica came through the wicket. Damn, what bad timing. Wow, Veronica whispered. What's with the mating games? Why is it the season? Right? What are you talking about? And Susan sent it to me to make us friends. She's very worried about Daddy. I'd be worried too, if I were you. Daddy's good, but he's no match for you. I am, but he's not. And the girls decided to explain that you can't be friends. Such a specimen is not suitable for friendship, only for love. Veronica, stop mocking. What are you doing here? If you're visiting, shall we go inside? Oh no, Stella, I'm not visiting. I'm here with an official wedding invitation. Oh, you've made up your mind, have you? You got me so fucked up in the head that I realized I've got enough time to waste. The wedding is in a month. Of course, I could have brought the invitations later, but I'm so excited I wanted to share it with someone. Russell, are you listening? I'm inviting you to the wedding. Veronica, why? Stella whispered, so Russell wouldn't hear. You don't know him at all. It's my decision. Whoever I want, I'm inviting. Okay, I'll run. Veronica left. Russell sat on the porch, and Stella didn't know what to do next. She was grateful, of course. Probably should take him out to lunch. She imagined it, sitting across from each other, eating and not saying a word. It's like a romantic date. If she doesn't think of something now, he'll leave. Isn't that what she dreamed of? And now what? You're looking for a reason to keep him, like or loyalty. You're inspired by an example. You want to get married. Yes, I did. You can't hide it. Not everyone would go for a woman who shows her disdain as much as possible. Besides, he's so handsome. Stella hadn't quite figured out what to say. Russell had already put on his shirt and was about to leave. The situation was saved by Susan. She flew into the yard. "Oh, Daddy, I'm glad you're still here. Let's take Stella out to dinner." "Stella, you don't realize how good a cook he is. He also plays the guitar." "What, at the same time?" "Oh, no. Did you and your dad agree to this proposal?" "Well, I don't mind," Russell said suddenly. "That's it then. It's a deal. We'll see you tonight." They left, and Stella wondered how it had all worked out. She didn't have to make the first move herself. "Dad, you weren't faking it, were you?" "I drive around and see Stella. Do you like it?" "What would you do without me?" "Thank you. Otherwise you'd be running around in circles for a year. It's too late for whipping. 10 years too late." Stella was going to visit, and she'd pulled out almost her entire closet so she could wear this one, which wasn't too flashy. He'll think she's dressed up for him. It's boring. It's not fashionable. And here's a light-colored sundress with small flowers. Modest, but tasteful. God, if someone had told me that she'd be dressed up and nervous before meeting Russell, the desirable one, I'd have spit in her face. That's how fate turns. Dressing up, and she gets nervous. She got dressed up, went out. And here Veronica from behind the fence has degenerated somewhere. You can't go anywhere unattended. Here's the deal. He's a good man. He's getting his hands on the right things. But God damn it, everybody knows she ain't there yet. Does the village know they're having an affair? Consider when the wedding is impossible to play and people are understandably bored and want bright events, but not to this extent. Let them think it's a good thing, though. Maybe it will come in handy. Dinner was above all praise. I couldn't believe Russell made it. I mean, how could I not? There's no restaurant here you can't order in. Susan was radiant, talking only about her father, how wonderful he was and what a sports career he had made. The girl really wanted her daddy to be happy. She remembered Mommy, remembered the love she had, but Mom was gone. She couldn't let her father live his life alone and untouchable. She liked Stella very much, and as she'd noticed, Stella looked at Daddy with interest. Susan's goal was to get them together, and if a child is up to something, parents are powerless. Russell and Stella had another fight. Everything was fine, talking, joking. Turns out Russell's not a very nice person at all. "Stella, who told you to say that?" She started talking about boxing not being a sport for girls again. All those years Russell spent nurturing his daughter's fighting skills. Almost raised a champion. Now some city teacher who knows nothing about professional sports says his daughter should quit boxing. Yes, she embroiders cross-stitch, but she can stand up for herself. If someone offends, you will cry, but she will fight back. She'll grow up to be a strong sportswoman. I guess that's my ambition. But I want my daughter to be a champion. If you had children, you would understand. Stella was hurt. It's not like he doesn't know anything, but it hurt. Finally liked a man, but as if from different universes, they could not understand each other. Stella walked home. Susan ran after her. "I'm sorry I hurt your daddy again. There's something I want to tell you. I think it's time." Russell and Leah were a nationally known couple. He's an American champion. Brutal, manly, and strong. She's a slim and delicate model whose photos were everywhere on the internet. Leah gave up her career as soon as she found out she was pregnant. No doubt she doesn't need this whole show business house, husband, child. No need for anything else. The birth was awaited with trepidation. The name was chosen long and carefully, but they did not agree. Leah wanted to name her daughter Melissa. Russell insisted on Susan. When Susan was born, her parents thought it was a miracle. There was no use saying they weren't the first. They weren't the last. Others had children too. Others just had children. But theirs was a miracle. Very Russell wanted his daughter to be called Susan, so he secretly from Leah registered the child and brought the birth certificate, in which the name Susan was written in black and white for eternity. Leah loved her husband so much that she didn't take offense and didn't say a word against it. Susan, so Susan, no matter what you call it, still a miracle extraordinary. Leah took care of the house and the baby. Russell was lost in training and competition. He was an American champion 3 times and was going to the World Championships. And he was 6 years old when Mom got sick. She didn't understand what Mommy was sick with, but she could see that Mommy was in a lot of pain. It's now she knows that Mom had cancer outside of the abundant stage. They tried to treat, looked for specialists, wrote to foreign clinics, all in vain. The worst was the feeling of hopelessness, the impossibility of changing something. Russell never left his wife's side. Constant care, medication by the hour. Everyone knew Leah was dying, tried to keep her with him just a little bit. After his wife's death, Russell refused to participate in the World Championships, and the risk was quite small to entrust her to relatives he could not. He couldn't leave her to anyone at all, not even for a day. Relations seemed to betray Leah. With the sports career was over, parted coaching. Slowly, he started coaching. She liked it, and there were abilities. His pupils steadily became prize winners of competitions. He was proud of their successes. Life settled down. The longing for the line has not gone anywhere but somehow subsided. But then the club's management changed, and the new director began to hint that medals are good, but money is better. Russell was not going to mix sports and business. He resigned and left with his daughter in the village. Here at least everything is honest. While Susan sat in the kitchen at Stella's, her dad, and poured his soul. What about it? No. Look, pisses me off to bits. What kind of woman is that? Everything's wrong. Well, don't go to her. Come on, I can't. Pisses me off as much as I liked her when I was conquering her. That's the kind of pithy man talk. Stella already hesitated in front of Russell, and after what was said, Susan felt like a complete fool who, knowing nothing about the man, managed to judge, and what's worse, to instruct. What a time Stella scolded herself for her language. So you don't have to be silent. Stella tried to see Russell less often. It's not like it's her fault. It's scary to look him in the eye. But he'd come by, clean the lot, fix up the house. Of course, we'd see each other. My heart sank, but I didn't have the courage to talk to him. Who could I ask for advice? Elise, of course. It's been a long time since we've gossiped. It's time. I spilled everything. I didn't hide anything. Elise didn't see the problem. There's someone willing, no competition. I like it. Too much. Girlfriend, I don't understand you. She's gone. What's wrong? The prince's horse is dead, and he can't get there on foot. Do I have to propose myself? No, wait. Bye. I'll come back in a couple weeks and we'll decide what to do. And when he dug up the whole lot, he repaired the fence. The taps and locks are fine. What else? And the answer is silence. Everything is decent, polite, and indifferent. He's already making fun of me. Russell's pouring his heart out to his friend. And he's watching. You can see it in his eyes. He can barely contain himself from laughing out loud. You think this is funny? I'm turning inside out in front of him, and he's laughing. He's sitting there all big, and he can't tell a woman he likes how he feels. Of course it's funny to you. You've got a wife, kids. I want a wife too, by the way. And not just any wife, but a very specific one. You're a family man, of course, and I'm a boxer. If you keep laughing now, you risk getting punched in the nose. My friend Russell, when was the last time you climbed into a woman's window? What do windows have to do with it? There are parallels. It has nothing to do with windows. It's all about the woman. Okay, you're the thin, ironic one. I'm thick, straightforward, probably dumb too. I don't understand your parables about windows. Are you trying to make a point? Flowers aren't an option either. That you brought a daisy. Veronica's rose. No movie theaters or restaurants here. Look, I never realized we were so lousy at romance. 3 more weeks of romance, but nothing's come up. The neighbors, ironically, have been eavesdropping for a long time. What are the men talking about? God, what primitive individuals. It's good that God first created them, and then, looking at his creation, decided to improve it. And I got a woman. When I realized the men were at an impasse, I decided to intervene. What the hell are flowers? You also invite to the dance at the club. Let the youngsters rejoice. Buy a ring and go propose. What if they say no? Of course they'll say no. It'd be strange if she said yes. Besides, she's getting married so suddenly. But she'll think about it, start evaluating the pros and cons. What does that mean? That you, Russell, will be on her mind all the time, and she can't think of anything else. Only you. That's what you want, isn't it? Do you think it'll work? Whenever it'll work. While Russell was devising a plan to win Stella over, she had an unexpected visitor. Justin had arrived. Stella was overjoyed. A family man, Sam's son. A reminder of happiness past. Justin had come for the express purpose of persuading Stella to return to town. He couldn't shake the guilt, realized Stella was in this hole because of his mother. Esbatella, I've put the apartment up for sale. Half of it's yours. Obviously, you can't buy one just like it, but you're going back to the city. I'd never claim my dad's place. We've got our own, but my mom's a little too close to the place. I understand. She can't get back at Dad anymore. She's taking it out on you. Justin, why sell? She was going to live there. She started renovating it. She started it, and she's done with it. Her goal was to torment you, and you just left. You ruined her fun. She doesn't need this apartment without you. Justin, I'm not going back to the city. Maybe someday, but not now. You and I are going to take a walk in the countryside. You'll realize it's not a shithole at all. Look what a plot of land I've seen. I'll need the money from the sale of the apartment. Dimka, how glad I am to see you. How did you find me? Eliza cracked it. I can't say for sure, but it seemed to me that there's another husband on the way. The bastard didn't even give me a hint. Dim, are you coming for a couple of days or to live with me? Stella, Dad wants to know if I'm expected for dinner. Susan stood in the doorway. I'll go a guest. I'll go tell him dinner for 4. Susan ran out. Stella, I think I'll stay, don't you? Yes, you may, of course. Only this girl is the neighborhood boxing champion. So be careful. The village had long ago realized where this was going. Only these young men can't make up their minds about what the city people can do to them. All those who had views on Russell realized that they were out of luck and nobly crawled away. Of course, I wanted to make a scene. She came here and stole the only decent man, but what's the use? He wasn't too late for their delights without her. But you can talk about how she loved him but let him go. Russell couldn't think of anything romantic to do. Everything seemed fine without the romance. Justin's arrival had somehow made communication almost familial. Lunches and dinners together, conversations over tea. Until almost midnight, Justin wouldn't leave the river, and Russell had the benefit of that. Neighbors were nudging Russell. Don't keep quiet. She may not love you yet, but she's definitely interested. If you don't ask, you won't know, and Stella had a visitor again. And what a guest. Elise is here. Elise wasn't just visiting on a rescue mission to help her friend. Elijah also had some exciting news, but she kept her mouth shut. First, she'd have to help her friend, let's see, the prince without a horse. Who do we want more, the prince or the horse? After the first dinner together, she decided that Stella needed the prince more. He can't take his eyes off you. He's a gorgeous man. I'm not talking about looks. There's nothing to talk about. He's so monumental in terms of character. Look closely. You'll never meet another like him. What am I telling you? You know it. But for some reason you're stalling. Breezy breaks himself. Well, that's bullshit. Elise prodded. Why aren't you saying anything? Justin said. You're getting married. Come on, spill the beans. Yes, I was really getting married. She assured him there were no mercantile interests in this marriage. Knowing her friend, Stella doubted that very much. The mere fact that she had been introduced to her future husband by her ex-husband suggested certain thoughts. If it had been the first husband, either an artist or a poet, one might have believed that money was out of the question, pure love. But Elise's fate was decided by her second husband. There were no people in his entourage who believed in selfless love. He invited Elise to some fancy reception. She didn't refuse. Who is it? There Eliza picked up a young and handsome businessman who by chance was unmarried. Now Eliza was doing everything she could to make the man's status change. Eliza, besides being single, do you know anything about him? And handsome, rich. What else is there to know? Well, not that young. Do you know about his wealth, though? Or did someone tell you? He's a businessman, so he has money. Anyway, we know for a fact that he's good-looking. Look, you're not a stupid woman and you're not poor. I never thought you'd be anyone's prey. You can't even tell me what business your businessman has. Never said what? Why didn't you ask? You always counted 3 steps ahead. What happened now? I can't believe you're brainwashed by mad love. I don't know. I've never seen your businessman. But at his age, and with a lot of money, you don't get lonely. Bella, what are you saying now? That he's a swindler or an Alfonso? I'm afraid. Funny, that's just my impression. I'm not insisting, but take a closer look. Don't be so harsh. Russell kept trying to talk to Stella. It didn't work. He was advised, don't be silent, say it. Then there's Susan. Then there's Justin, who won't leave her side. And now Elise has been added to the mix. Of course, you can find a place and a time, but Russell didn't. He was afraid, so he didn't say anything. Hopefully, if he said no, he'd have to crawl away. And then how to live. One evening, when Susan and Justin had gone to the club and Eliza had tactfully withdrawn, Russell made up his mind. Stella, you can see I like you. You don't have to say anything. If you say it, but I don't want to hear it. I told you to let you know. You already knew. Now you know for sure. Think the step is behind you. Russell, I don't know what to say. It's good that you don't. I have something to say, or rather ask. Stella, I need some advice. Russell was upset with his daughter. He had raised an athlete, a champion, and she suddenly said she wanted to be a lawyer. Why, all of a sudden, all that hard work, all that coaching, all that success, now it's all gone. And she won't listen to anything. I got a job on vacation as an assistant at a law firm. I drive her to the neighborhood every morning. I've been enrolling in pre-law classes since September. I'm determined to go to law school. What do you want to become a champion? Then what? Ever thought how your daughter will live after finishing even a brilliant career, without education, without a family, without children? You don't have to say that everything can be combined. You know you can't. Your daughter is wiser than you. Don't let her get in the way. We almost had another fight. We couldn't have a romantic conversation. Stella has decided to talk to her. If her decision was firm, Stella would support her, and Daddy couldn't resist too. Russell couldn't think of anything romantic to do. He suspected the idea of climbing through the window was becoming more and more common. I mean romance. Veronica had come to the rescue with her wedding. Russell was going to the wedding as if it were his own. He was even more excited. What do newlyweds have to worry about? They've got it all figured out. He had total uncertainty. It was a rustic wedding. Neighbors dragged treats into the house. Homemade sausage, baked chickens, compotes. In 3-liter jars, the men made a table for half a yard and corresponding benches. Veronica's girlfriends made up riddles for the redemption and contests. Stella was invited to the wedding, but she, seeing their trimmed, almost beyond decency, tasks for the groom, declined. So how did you guys have fun in the city? We have the internet. We see our jokes, florals. We lips and other body parts without pouting. We don't change gender. Now that's embarrassing. We're just having fun. The wedding was epochal. One crowd on the bride's side, another crowd on the groom's side. The bride's side had the tougher crowd. The groom's side had the tougher men. There was no fight. Now the saying, what wedding without a fight is not real. The bride was happy. The groom was glowing. Risk justified the nickname monkey. It grabbed her mother by the hem of the puffy dress. Contests, jokes, toasts, songs, dances. People had fun from the heart. It's not often that events of this scale happen. Now there will be enough talk for a month. They will retell who did what, who said what. The heroes of these stories will claim it never happened. Maybe it didn't. It doesn't matter. The history of the village has already been written, and with each retelling, new colorful details will be added. It is said that if the guests sing a lot at a wedding, the life of the young people will be cheerful and happy. If this omen works, then Veronica and Alex will be the happiest people in the world, and they will laugh on and off. The musician played all evening with a break for a drink. I had time to drink, but not to eat. People demanded songs. They sang the most heartfelt ones, so many golden lights. Because the musician did not have time to have a snack, in 3 hours we were left without him. The young people were happy that at last they could turn on some normal music. They, of course, turned on. But after 10 minutes, adults demanded to turn off this crap and turn on something soulful. But for them soulful, the guys did not know, so they turned on old songs. Even the ones who had never gotten out of their chairs went dancing. Russell walked over to Stella, holding out his hand. Stella put her hand on Russell's shoulder. They talked about love. They danced. Russell thought here it was, romance, and then suddenly, and love was gone. What do you mean, gone? It hasn't started yet. Wrong song. Stella's heart sank. She wanted to tell her love so badly. But it's supposed to be the man who speaks first. He didn't talk about love, but he said it a step after her. No, I can't take that step. Why don't you say something? Wedding was in full swing. There was singing and dancing, and Stella suddenly remembered her and Sam. She remembered the wedding without longing, without hopelessness, with sadness, sorrow, and gratitude. For the first time since Sam's death, thinking of him was just a bright memory. But the tears did come. To avoid spoiling people's holiday, Stella got up from the table, left the yard, and walked toward the river. She didn't want to part with thoughts of Sam. The sadness didn't hurt anymore. It seemed to Stella that Sam was letting her go, telling her to move on, to be happy, to take her time. Russell went after Stella, but Eliza stopped him. Don't. Let her be alone. She sang goodbye to the past. She didn't let Roman go. She followed. She realized Stella wasn't going back to town. Her fate is a bit of a long shot here, but she's not going anywhere. From this soft-spoken but reliable man. Hey, what's the matter with her? She's always getting some fake prints. I just want to be loved. I guess to be loved, you have to love yourself. Fate is like a boomerang that gives you what you put into the world. Stella knows how to love, but she keeps calculating and guessing. I guess we miscalculated. Well, what are we? Young and beautiful? We'll have time for more. Liza found Stella. She was sitting on the bank, looking at the slow river, sat down next to her and hugged her. Don't be sad, girlfriend. Tell me, are you going back? Definitely not right now. The school year has just started. It's not like I can leave everything behind. It's a little scary, of course. How will I live here in the winter? But others are living here. They won't let you go to waste. Of course they won't. Especially a big one like that. Elise laughed. It's so funny to look at you two. It's like Beauty and the Beast. The monster is really cute though and keeps his eyes on you. Stella, what the fuck do you want? You can't get Sam back and Russell loves you. Why do you get such great men? Am I any worse? You're getting him. You're a little hasty. Eliza, what am I supposed to do? I like Russell. Susan wants to get Daddy settled. She's doing everything she can to push him. Justin's joined us for 2 days and he's been staying for 2 weeks. That makes sense, but I don't make sense. Honey, I can't just tell him I love him. He's healthy, strong. He's not afraid of anyone but me. We'll wait and see. I'll go home tomorrow. I came to save you, but I don't seem to have anyone to save you from. I'm going to deal with my businessman and my ex-husband at the same time. What a bastard taking revenge, planning a con man. Well, I'll go. I won't disturb you. There's Russell walking around behind the bushes. It had darkened considerably. A huge moon hung in the still bright sky, the river. You could hear the wedding party singing. Flowers, water. It was a good fit here, Russell. I'll sit with you. Sure, Russell, I realize it's none of my business. But why didn't you get married again? It's hard to be alone with a baby. No, it's hard for me. It would have been worse without Susan. She saved me. I didn't marry because I was waiting for you. Stella, will you stop walking around? You see how I feel about you. If you can't see it, ask the village. They saw it all a long time ago. They sat side by side and looked at the river. They were each thinking about something else. Russell looked quietly at Stella, though he wanted to stare at her. He thought that fate had given him a chance to be happy again. She had sent him this woman, but he could not decide to accept this gift. Fate might take offense. It's easier to hug, kiss, tell her how much he loves her. He even bought a ring on the advice of his neighbors. Maybe it's silly. But if you don't have any ideas of your own, someone else's will do. But Stella thought about how you can't go wrong. She was already happy in the way she loved Sam. She couldn't love again. And she didn't have to. One must also love differently with the experience of troubles and mistakes. Lisa's right. She's really lucky to have the best men. Fate has kept her from making mistakes. They say fate chooses. No, it doesn't. It gives you a chance not to make a mistake. Stella didn't make a mistake. She's not going to forget Sam. Just like Russell will never forget his wife. Even their fates are the same. One grief for both of them. Then happiness must be shared. It should be. But if Russell remains silent, that shared happiness may never happen. Come on, Russell, say something. Russell didn't say anything. Russell did. He put his arms around Stella, kissed her, and took the ring box out of his pocket. Stella, will you marry me? Stella was confused. There was such bewilderment on her face that Russell laughed. This was exactly the reaction he had expected. That's what the neighbors said. What neighbors said? You'll say no, but you'll think about it. Or won't you? I realize the height of levity to hope that you'll say yes at once and take the ring. You'll look at it and think of me. You'll think of who, won't you? Me. Stella only smiled enigmatically and pressed herself tighter. She thought to herself that she was already thinking about him.